Select Board has come to order at 6 p.m. on the 28th of March. We're in call to order. And then I wanted to make another comment before we start. I'm expecting that some people are going to want to speak later or anytime, and that because we got so many people on such a long agenda, we're going to limit remarks to 3 minutes per person. So just remember that you've got 3 minutes, and we have an official timer over here on my right. Call to order, approve the March 7th joint meeting with the Budget Board and the March 14th, 2024 Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Yay. There we go. Okay, it's a public forum.
Yeah,
It's an opportunity for anyone to speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Robin?
Hello. Robin Phillips, Kennebunkport. This is regarding the pier progress, and I'll just read you what I wrote so I don't lose track. On September 22nd, 2022, the town of Kennebunkport held a special town meeting at the village fire station to approve a large-scale renovation plan for the Cape Porpoise Pier. The reason stated for the special town meeting rather than an ordinary ballot vote was that they wanted to begin the pier project November 2022. On November 7, 2023, the voters of Kennebunkport approved an additional $700,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund to meet the expected increase in costs for the project. I have noticed that the causeway is well underway and is expected to be completed in June 2024. While it is unlikely that the pier project, for practical reasons, would start before the end of tourist season, I would appreciate it if the project to keep the working waterfront functional would remain a top priority as the causeway has. So I just have a couple questions because I haven't really heard much about it starting or what's happening. So I think Lori, several months ago, Lori Smith informed the board that the pier project was out for bid. I'm wondering if you've received these bids, and if so, when do you expect the pier project to begin?
So the town received bids at the end of last week. So the engineer has the bids and is analyzing them in terms of their accuracy and whether they include all the elements. And we expect to bring it back to the first meeting in April for an update.
Okay. So my understanding is that we can receive substantial funds and grant money to help with the large cost associated with this project. And I'm aware that most grants have, an expiration date. Are we still in the timeline? So, because those grants were secured back in 2022,
Yep.
will we still
So
be able to meet those?
Yeah, so right now the EDA grant we have is good until, I think, 2026. I think we got it in 2021, official notice, and I think it has a 5-year time period on it.
Okay.
We can ask for an extension if necessary, but that's the normal period. And the state SHIP grants are the other grants, and we're still good with those.
Okay, so even if it takes us until 2026 to complete the project, we still get the money?
I mean, we need, certainly for EDA, and I believe for the state as well, certainly they want to be updated after we are finished analyzing the bids.
Okay, and for the project, when you went out to bid, did you have a start and finish time on those? Like, what should
The bid
people
had,
expect?
so we can't do construction until November because of the natural resources permit. We can't be below water and except from November till April 1st about. And so the plan would be to do construction over the winter months.
So you think possibly that could start this November?
That was the plan in the bid. That was the timeline in the bid.
Okay, so we're still rolling.
That is the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Moving right along, it's a public hearing on Chapter 160, Traffic and Vehicles, 160-27, Goose Rocks Beach Parking Stickers. Want to do
So
that?
this is a, yeah, public hearing, so you need to open the public
Open
hearing.
the public hearing at this point. I have a motion.
So moved?
Okay, all right, all those in favor? Good. We're in public hearing.
So this amendment to chapter 160-27 would clarify that vehicles must have a Goose Rock Beach parking sticker between the hours of 8 AM and 5 PM. Currently, it says 8 AM to 6 PM. A couple of years ago, the hours that people are allowed to have dogs on the beach changed from 6 PM to 5 PM. And so this change in the parking regulations would put it in alignment with that.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Total sense to me.
Yeah.
Works.
Do we have,
Need a motion?
where do you want
Yes.
to get
I
comment?
gotta ask for any public comment.
Yeah, public comment?
Right.
Excellent.
Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I wonder if there's anybody in
Oh.
TV
Do
land.
we have anybody out there?
We have 13 attendees.
Okay.
And none of them have their hands up.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we change is it an ordinance that this is, or is it?
It is an ordinance,
It
it's a
is.
traffic ordinance.
So that we modify the traffic ordinance for parking at Goose Rock Beach to require a sticker between the hours of 8 AM and 5 PM. That's to change the 6 PM hour to 5 PM.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to review the final fiscal year 2025 budgets and make recommendations. Board, what's your pleasure?
I'm fine. What would be that?
Usually we
well,
go down through these.
Yeah, we go down
Yeah,
through
we
each
usually
one
go
and just
through the
approve each
section.
amount by the.
Yeah.
I would like to say, though, before we start, that the tax commitment is, on the municipal side, the mill rate in this budget brings our mill rate down by 4 cents. So there's a 4-cent reduction, and the way you can look at that is every penny is about $40,000, so, in the budget. So we're down by 4 cents. However, the school budget is up by 36 cents on the mill rate. And so, and there's not anything that the board can do or the budget committee can do for the school board budget other than vote when it comes out. I guess there's another meeting. Is there another meeting on the budget? So attend the budget and talk with the school board. Do you know where that is, Diane? Is Diane here? Do you know what it is?
It's Monday evening, April 1st at Kennebunk Elementary School.
Okay, so Monday, April 1st at Kennebunk Elementary School. Okay, thank you. Okay,
And I would like to just commend the town, Lori and her staff for bringing in this budget, not just flat, but less than what was the 2024.
I think we all feel that way.
Yes.
so why don't we, I'm trying to get to it here on my screen.
I'd be glad to read these off. Should I
Why don't you read them off? Yeah, oh, there we go.
So for the first vote, it would be for the general government program expenses of $2,444,608.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Second would be the public safety program expenses at $3,508,414.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Next, health and welfare program expenses, $1,021,536.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Next is public works program expenses, $1,560,176.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? 5-0.
Next, recreation, culture, contingency, and miscellaneous program expenses, $1,088,176.
So moved.
Second.
Favor? Unanimous? Next one?
Next is capital expenses and reserve account and debt service payments at $3,774,845.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
And I just will state for the record that the total municipal expenditures, $13,397,755.
And that makes the municipal portion of the mill rate go down by 4 cents versus last year. So it's,
Bravo. But again, just to underscore that there is still
there'll still be an increase,
the
right,
school we have to pay.
because of the school.
I'd just like to make a comment, though, that it seems like we just rattled off some numbers and we all unanimously approved, which we did, but we've spent, we spent the last month with the budget board and the select board, and all the department heads come in and review their budgets per line items, talk about year over year differences, we talk about any changes in capital. So it is, even though right now it just looked like that, it has been a very extensive process to get to this point.
And last year, there was recommendations that we increase revenue, and we did. We were able to increase revenue in some spots that contributes to the 4 cents.
Maybe just one more thought on process. Now the budget board will meet separately, and they will be reviewing their numbers. So they have, this is the town's proposed. The budget board is reviewing theirs. We'll get together and reconcile any differences, and then hopefully bring a single budget to you all in the June town meeting.
Anybody, any questions from anybody? Okay, anybody in the audience?
No hands raised.
Okay, hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and go back into regular session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, favor? Okay, good. We're back in regular session. The next item on the agenda is the Public Safety Study presentation by Municipal Resources, Inc. And who wants to do that, Jay? Or who, oh, these guys, okay.
Are you gonna go home?
Good evening, everybody. My name's David Houghton. I work with Municipal Resources Incorporated. We're actually out of New Hampshire. This is Dave Bankston. He's actually the fire chief in Moultonborough, New Hampshire. We're both practitioners, so we are still in the fire service doing our daily duties every day. So it's kind of made it interesting coming to a project like this, which we've done many of, because we have a lot of experience and we have a lot of knowledge of what's happening in other places throughout New England. And being New England, we are different than the rest of the country. So we focus strictly on things that are happening in New England. And everything that we put up for tonight, we're only looking at things at a 30,000-foot view. The report itself has about 60 recommendations in it. We're only doing about 6 tonight based on time. And then it'll be able to have people ask questions. I'm not sure, is the report been out in public yet or, okay. So can you go to the next slide? So this is what we were engaged to do, to review the manner in which the fire department and EMS is being conducted within the town, to evaluate both the organizational structure, the administration, and the management of both of those agencies, and provide recommendations for improvement. One of the things that we tried to do is try to give a little bit of guidance as to how to implement some of these things. But what we try also not to do is to dictate to a community how you need to do things, how you need to make this plan, how you need to move things forward. So we've given you a whole bunch of pieces, and it's up to the community to decide which piece to put into play and which piece not to put into play, and when not to put it in there. So this could be, the recommendations could be things that you start with this year, and it could go for the next 5 years. We're going to cover, like I say, only the top of those items. We're not going to go through every individual one of them. There's about 60 of them altogether. So next slide, please. So the goal, once again, is to create a report that becomes just a guide for the town to use, as we call it, it's tools for the toolbox, so that the town can use those tools and be able to bring them out of the toolbox and be able to enact them as they move forward. Once again, it's the community that gets to decide how the program or how changes are made. We are not in a position to dictate anything like that to a community. So I think it's important everybody understands. Yes, we do have a plan, but the plan are just the pieces of the puzzle. and they are in kind of a particular order, but the community decides which order to actually put them in and which ones they want to act on and which ones they do not. Okay? Next slide, please. So the methodology, we had come in and we'd interview a whole bunch of stakeholders. I will tell you right now, from being a practitioner, you have a phenomenal group of fire and EMS people in this community to take care of you. These people are very dedicated. They are really the authors of a lot of the information that's in this document. They're the ones, we didn't come in here and assume things, they gave us the details. So these are the people that are doing the work for you, and their concerns and stuff is what was built into this report. We did use common things, which we'll review in a second, to kind of take their items and use them to make sure that they matched standards and whatnot for it. But once again, that's what created this whole thing. We did nominal group sessions with several of the people, including the board. We did one-on-one sessions with to get us a lot of the feedback that we put forward. We did do an evaluation, obviously, of all the on-site operations, the facilities, all the apparatus and equipment and whatnot for it. All the recommendations for improvements are included in the document itself. Next slide. Once again, we looked at things such as the Insurance Services Office, which is the group of people who essentially come in and do a larger scale, deep down look at all of the aspects of fire suppression only. And they set your homeowner's insurance rate for the fire suppression or fire part of your insurance policy only. So that is one group that a lot of your insurance companies will look to find out what does the department have for staffing, equipment, water supply, response times. There's a whole host of elements that they use to give each community a grade. And that grade is what they use to help set the fire insurance portion of your homeowner's insurance only. It's not your whole policy, it's just part of that. And it's a rating scale that they use for that. NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association. Anything that touches the fire service pretty much has recommendations that are in a document or in standards that we all look towards, and that's everything from components of a fire truck to health and safety of firefighters to fire suppression, to fire alarm systems, your smoke detectors, your CO detectors, all of that stuff. That all comes from the NFPA. There is a Commission of Fire Accreditation, an international thing. We only took components of that. There are very few accredited fire departments in New England because the cost is so expensive to be able to meet all of the individual needs to make accreditation. The CAS is something that we use. That's a Commission of Accreditation for Ambulance Services that talks a lot about response times, response capabilities, and they also give you benchmarks for how long from the time the 911 call until you actually arrive on scene. We're happy to say that in Kennebunkport, your ambulance service meets that, and they're well within their guidelines for that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So let's go right through and look at the fire department itself. We've looked through everything. You guys are well equipped, and you have a very well maintained fleet. We did spend quite a bit of time speaking with the fire chief, both in person. He took us around for the community, to tour the stations, to tour the apparatus. We've had several Zoom calls back and forth with him. And once again, I can't impress on enough that you do have a really good, dedicated group of people here. They're like every other fire service in all of New England. We're not perfect. We have some shortcomings. We've outlined some of the shortcomings. But I got to tell you, nothing out of the ordinary. Everything that we've written in here is common throughout every department that we have done in at least the last year or so. So all of the items that are in here, it looks like an awful lot, but you have a fairly new chief, and the chief is doing a phenomenal job of trying to plug away at getting these things all done. And once again, we didn't think it was fair for us to put in an order and say, Chief, you got to do this, this, and this, and this, in this order. No. He needs to decide what's the best order to be able to implement any of these recommendations that he feels he needs to move on. He needs to do that within his department, with his officers, and in conjunction with with Lori, to make sure that everything is done succinctly in order. It wouldn't be fair for us to do that.
So when you say recommendations, does he have to do these?
Their recommendation, there's no mandates. We're not in the business of making mandates. If a recommendation is in there.
But the way you phrased it was like, and the town manager will make sure that he gets the
Correct. So they have to sit down and look at the 60 recommendations, and they could figure out, well, this
16 or
year,
60?
there's 60 recommendations that are in the book, 60. So they need to look at all of these recommendations and figure out which ones are ones that we should make goals and objectives for the first year, and which ones can wait year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5.
Or not do it all?
Or not do it all.
Okay, that
Yep.
was my question.
Yep, it's
Okay.
totally up to,
Okay.
it's up to the chief to say, this is something that we need to do. A lot of these recommendations, though, were things that were crafted by comments from all of the stakeholders that we spoke to.
Okay.
A couple of them were things that we saw, and one of them, for instance, talks about a fire station and a concern about that fire station. That was something that we saw. That was not that came from comments from any of the stakeholders. But once again, the community needs to decide
Okay.
with the fire chief and with Lori to figure out which ones should we be moving forward right away and which ones can we wait on, okay? Once again, they perform their duties without any problems whatsoever. They do a very good, positive public image. So the people that we did speak to speak very highly of the entire departments, and that is CHEMS as well as the fire department. It's both groups. So next slide, please. So key concerns for CHEMS, once again, this is very consistent. We're seeing this all over the place, and it's being able to maintain a consistent level of service. So in other words, having a paramedic there all of the time using per diem staff. Paramedics are like very rare and very hard to find right now. There's such a competition of paramedics for working for private ambulance services as well as municipal departments. The municipal departments are winning over because they're giving them a better benefit package and better wages than a lot of the private EMS companies are able to do, because communities don't look at EMS as a revenue accounts. It does bring some revenue in, but it's not a for-profit business like the private ambulances do. So there's a lot of that back and forth, but especially for paramedics, it's getting very hard to find paramedics. We've lost a lot after 9/11, and they're just not getting certified like they used to.
So when
So,
you,
yep.
sorry, when you speak about paramedics, so are you speaking truly about paramedics or the EM1s, EM2s? Are you lumping it all together?
So,
or
no,
you-
EMTs, there's still people going to EMT school, that's the basic level.
Yep.
So you're still getting that, but we're very limited on what an EMT can physically do
Right.
for a patient. And then we have the intermediate level or the
Right.
advanced level, and then we have the paramedic level. And the paramedic level is a preferred level because their skill set that they have, the tools that they have, definitely can make a difference when you have a medical crisis.
Right. And so is it the whole band?
It's
that
pretty much
is
the
being-
paramedics are the
it's
hardest
just
ones
the
to get.
paramedic
Yep.
part of that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
They're the top people. It's a lot of schooling, and it's a lot to keep up their credentials for that. The basic EMTs, there's a lot of classes being run. It's a requirement for most communities now that are hiring full-time staff, that the bottom level, you have to be an EMT when you come in the door. And so there's quite a few people that are out there that are being certified like that.
So I don't want to take you off the rail of your presentation, so you can hold this question
Okay.
if you want to answer it later. But when I was reading through the report, I was wondering about the combination of EMTs and firemen. So I don't know if it wasn't really addressed that I could find, so.
So just about every full-time department or people that are hiring even per diem people to work shifts, they're looking for people that are cross-trained. So they'd be certified as firefighters and also be certified at the minimum of a basic EMT. So they could do dual roles. Whatever the call is, they can go out on it, they could perform their duties at.
Okay, so just one quick follow-up then. So what are the schools putting out? So when we're looking at the feeders into all these professions, are the schools putting out cross-trained, or is it something that just somebody says, hey, I like to do both?
So it's two disciplines, two separate disciplines. It's a
Yep.
medical discipline, a fire discipline. So like the fire academies pretty much focus on fire only. And then there are colleges, universities, and private institutions that are out there teaching EMS only. So they're going to end up going to two different schools. There are a couple in Laconia, New Hampshire. They have a college in Laconia, New Hampshire that does both programs together, and it's part of a degree program for them. And that's starting to evolve into other colleges to be able to get both certifications through, but it's not common.
So the majority of hires in New England across groups are still one or the other,
No, majority of them being hired for a fire department are cross-trained.
at least an entry-level EMT.
Correct. Yep. And a lot of them are hiring at the entry-level EMT, but making a condition of their employment that within a certain time period, it's usually 2 years, they have to go to an advanced level or an intermediate EMT. But that's a condition that happens. They need to get the people in there to start the services first and take care of the business first, and then they'll advance their skills as part of their employment.
Thank you.
So, okay?
So I have a follow-up. How long does it take to become a paramedic? Versus,
Remember how many hours?
2 years.
Two ye-
It's typically, if you're going through a college program.
Can you just make sure you use the mic so the audience at home
sorry.
can hear you?
So, if they are going to a college program, it's usually an associate's degree level program, which is a 2-year program to complete that program. The biggest differential between the levels of a basic EMT is you're coming in with basic EMS skills. There are certain skills that you can do, and as you go to what is known as the advanced EMT level, there are certain medications that you're allowed to administer at that level, and then at the highest level, the paramedic level, those are the areas where pain control medications, narcotics, and that type of drugs would be issued. And pain control has really become more of a service demand in EMS now. Is that in the past, it wasn't so much of an issue, but it has now become an integral component of EMS delivery in the country. And paramedics are in demand throughout the country. In New England, and particularly in Maine, actually, fire departments are going to less fires and they're doing more EMS calls. That's why the demand is there, is because we're seeing it. And everybody in New England is competing for the same resources. So people will move from different departments to get a better benefits package, better retirement, those types of issues there. So having consistency and in being able to deliver those EMS services to your community is critical in moving forward with your whole emergency service delivery package.
Thank you.
well, thank you.
So I'll get back onto the slides here, but for the key issues for CHEMS that we're looking at is the consistent level of that service that we're trying to do. And as David said, pain control is a huge issue. So if you could think about it, if you fell and fractured your hip, the amount of pain that you're in. In the old days, we used to just say, take a deep breath, we're going to pick you up and move you, and it's very, 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 very uncomfortable. Now having the paramedics to be able to give you some pain meds to help lessen that pain, doesn't take it all away, but to lessen it, it just makes everybody, the patient and the EMS providers, it's just a lot better all around for everybody. So that's the key level that they're fighting for now. The consistent use of the endowment fund to offset the operational costs is one of the concerns. We looked at the way that was going down for CHEMS. The lack of having a second ambulance, so therefore, the only way you can bill and successfully receive any receipts is for the transport. So there currently is not mechanisms in place yet that allow you to bill for going out and evaluating somebody or going out and treating somebody but not having to transport them. There is no way to do that. So not having a second ambulance, so if your first one is either one tied up in another call or two out of service for repairs, there is no way of receiving any receipts for a transport. You'd be calling a mutual aid town in. That mutual aid town would receive all of the funds that the insurance company would pay. So that lack of a backup ambulance is one. And honestly, the increased cost of doing business, the cost is just like it is for building a house. The cost of EMS supplies continually goes up, but the ability to recoup a higher level of funds is not there yet. The potential decrease in revenue, most people's revenue streams are based on Medicare and Medicaid rates, and you set your own rates above and beyond that. But if Medicare ever drops their rates down, then you're forced to drop your rates down as well. So that's a little bit of a concern for that. Next slide, please.
When you go, just really quick, the lack of the ambulance backup, you're talking not about a structural vehicle, you're talking about having another set.
A second ambulance.
A second physical ambulance that's fully staffed, or?
Nope, just equipped.
Just equipped?
Just equipped. So you can do your staffing with callback people. You could do, if this was to merge fire and EMS together, then if you have firefighters that are licensed at an EMT level and the second ambulance is in the bay and ready to go, they could take that and make the second transport. But you don't have that ability yet.
So, so what I couldn't find the connection for that comment was our call rate. So the call rate looks to be like we can handle So are you basing this on a feeling or evidence that we're missing the call rate is too close to a one ambulance, or what? That's what I was trying to.
Yeah, we don't have the actual number of either back-to-back calls or calls that were missed. The transports were not provided by CHEMS, but they never missed a call. They've always gone on the call. They've always taken a fire department vehicle and been able to move the equipment over and got there to do the evaluation and the treatment right away, but they haven't been able to do the transport because their ambulance is either in having service, repairs, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so is that actually happening?
That's happening. That's what happens now.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
I don't think it's happening that much, though, is it?
I don't have the exact number for what it is. So, and I am sure that if, I
So
shouldn't say it.
were you just saying this could happen?
It will happen. It does happen. It does happen. I can't tell you how many times right now that, I mean, you have your car serviced, ambulances have to be serviced. If a call comes in when the ambulance is up on the lift having its oil changed,
So you're saying it could happen?
and it does happen. It's just how many times it
But
happens.
here,
It's happening here.
it has
But he's
happened.
not sure what it is.
I can't give you a finite number. I don't know what the number is. I can tell you it does happen,
Yeah, Jim Stockman told us.
but not right now.
Jim Stockman told us, I think at his presentation last week at the budget meeting, that kind of a thing happens.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's inevitable. It happens in any department that only has a single resource or a
Right.
single ambulance.
okay,
And
Okay.
again, if you don't transport, you don't receive any revenue.
right.
So,
Correct.
Well, yeah, and somebody could die, you know?
oh, that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
ne-
we do though have, we do, I mean, I don't want everybody to feel like we don't have coverage. We do also have agreements with our other towns.
Correct.
So like our CHEMS people helps Biddeford,
Yep.
Kennebunk, so we have
Vice
very
versa.
close brothers and sisters and neighborhoods here that we back up for, so I.
Fire and EMS is,
Yeah, so
they're-
no
all
one
the
should feel
mutual aid
that-
agreements are in play.
When they come, they get paid.
That's
We
correct.
don't. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't want anybody to think that because you only have one ambulance, no one's gonna show up. The CHEMS people are definitely gonna show up.
Yeah.
And then another mutual aid ambulance from another community is going to come and make that transport to the hospital. Just the point is, remember that when that other community makes a transport, they get the revenue.
Well, likewise, we also show, when we go through the monthly
Yep,
reports
what-
from CHEMS, Joe and Jim show us evidence where we've shown up to Biddeford, or we showed up to Kennebunk, and we're getting revenue. So it is, it was a fair
It's a
share.
mutual aid thing. It's all mutual. It's a
Right,
back
we're
and
back
forth.
in-
If you have two ambulances, you have the double chance. You have to do the cost benefit and see how it goes.
Correct.
It's a-
And the way to kind of do it is, and the way we've recommended communities, you don't go out and buy two ambulances. You have a perfectly good ambulance now, but in your capital plan for the future, you place another ambulance in play. The second ambulance that you have, don't trade that in. You keep that as your second ambulance or as your spare, and that's very common to happen. Let's look right now at the fire one, the long-term staffing, including declining numbers of call firefighters. That is a nationwide problem. I'm sure people are hearing about it. It's on the news a lot, especially on the network stations are all talking about the number of call firefighters have dwindled quite a bit. The chief is doing what he can to recruit and retain new people. In this, we made some more recommendations as part of this document here for things that he might want to try to do to, once again, recruit and retain different people. Consistent training of all members, it's a very difficult thing to do because he's got people that are new, he's got people that are been here a number of years. So there's a way to be able to meld those together so that everybody consistently trains together. It's just like a football team. The players don't go and train on their own, they train together. A football game and a fire, they're pretty much the same. You have a coach, the coach tells you what to do, and the teams go out there and do it. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it, but we need to make sure that everybody is consistently being trained at the same way so that we don't have any conflicts. Minimum training and participation standards, that's something we're seeing more and more departments implement, and that means that you don't get people that are coming in the door that just want the T-shirt. You're getting people that are coming in the door that understand day one, there's an expectation from the fire chief and from the department for X number of training sessions a year because we want you to be a valuable asset to us on the fire ground. And the participation standard is we expect you to show up to calls as much as you can, and here's our minimum standards, and you have to meet that minimum standards. We know a department that went from having almost 45 people on a roster, that they cut that roster in half after they looked at their participation and training standards, because the roster looked like they had a ton of people, but in reality, they had less than half of those people that were qualified to do that.
So I'm sorry, but you're basically referencing people that are staying up to date on their training versus somebody that's on the roster that doesn't have the training to go to a, okay, to go
So
to.
if you haven't put an air pack on yourself in a year and a half or 2 years, how valuable are you going to be to the fire chief when you're there fumbling, trying to figure out how to put it on? That's a typical training thing that happens at least a couple of times a year that you go through SCBA training, self-contained breathing apparatus training. But if someone hasn't been there and hasn't put that pack on, hasn't been fit tested for their mask to make sure it's good, how valuable is that person to the fire chief? And that's what this means. This means they have to come up to a certain level of training, and the chief needs to determine what that level is.
Okay.
So, next slide, please. Common areas, I'd say Chems and the fire department are both facing, they're heading towards this crossroads where they have to make some decisions, the community has to make some decisions, and they have to do it in what's the best interest of the town. The good news is that you've got a year, because you're going through your budget right now. So there's a few items that are in here that may be in this year's budget, but you've got a year to plan out what you want to do for next year and the year after and the year after. As soon as you're done with this budget cycle, Lori's going to kill me when I say it, you're going to start the next one all over again. That's just the way that it works. So you're kind of in a good spot with wrapping this up now and moving forward with it. The biggest common thing we can say is about staffing and making sure that you consistently have the appropriate people, appropriate certified people showing up to the calls 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the important part of this whole thing. You have to make sure you have the right people to do it. You certainly have done a phenomenal job of giving the departments the right equipment. We just want to make sure that you have the right people to run it. The equipment looks great, but it's no good if you don't have the appropriate people to run it. So that's what we're looking for now. Next slide, please. So the key concerns, once again, our big concern is when you look at that roster and you cut that roster right down, what's the potential of diminishing that level of service? I think that through our interviews and stuff that we did at the department, you're going to have a very good core of people that are going to be there when you need them. We'd like to see the chief be able to increase that core of people so he has more people to be able to rely on for it. The number of the annual service level is going up incrementally for the calls for service for the fire department. Once again, the more calls, if you don't have enough people to answer those calls, and it has to be the appropriate people answering those calls, it becomes difficult for the chief to be able to manage the department that way. So everything kind of dovetails together between staffing level and equipment levels and things like that. You've got the equipment level down. We got to figure the staffing levels out. Next slide, please. So the key recommendations, like I said, there are many risks, are also great opportunities. This report can either just sit on a shelf and do nothing with it, or it can engage the community. We know it is engaging the fire chief. We had a quick conversation with him tonight, which we will continue at a later date, because he'd like some more information based on some of the recommendations we have, and we'll be there to give him all of that information. Whatever he wants, he knows he can call and we can ask, and we'll give more detail and more information for. What we didn't want to do, once again, was to clutter up a report with saying you have to do it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. That, our opinion might be this, but it may not work here. And we want to make sure that the chief and the community get to decide what order to put those recommendations in to make it happen. Next slide, please. So some of the key recommendations, we think that Chems, a phenomenal group of people. They've done a tremendous job, we know, for a number of years. They are a 501c3, which is a nonprofit for them. We think they should continue to raise their funds and continue to do capital items and support the EMS system. But we also think that you're going to come to the crossroads where the town should take over the actual operations of the EMS. And that way the town would also get the receipts to help overcome some of the costs of doing that. They'll be able to manage the staffing level. There'll be some reduced costs because currently Chems being a private entity, they're on their own for their own insurance and all of the expenses that go with it. When you merge to the town plan, the town by the numbers of people we have, there'll be some cost savings in that as well. We think that that should happen. And interestingly enough, in 2009, the town and Chems commissioned their own group of people to look at this, and this recommendation was made in 2009, but has not been implemented yet. There's a copy of that as part of the report. Somebody had mentioned it to us, so we went digging and found it, and we found it in the town report that recommendation was already made in 2009, and it was almost for the exact same reasons that we're having today. Next slide, please. The fire department staffing, when we had talked to a member of the members, we have talked about doing a mentoring program. We're seeing more and more mentoring programs coming up, and it's being very successful. We've talked to the chief about that. It is something that we have given him a draft copy of a mentoring program, and I know that he has time, he'll be able to go through that and be able to implement that. We're seeing a great success rate of retaining people based on a mentoring program. The increase in staffing at Port Village Station during the daytime hours, we think is important because that's generally when most of your employees, or call firefighters, I should say, are at work, and they don't have the availability. It's not like the old days where people worked in town, and when the pager or the whistle went off, they could leave work and go to the fire station, get in the fire. It doesn't happen that way anymore. So there needs to be this blend of how many people and when. When you have big events in town that are happening, you want to staff up for that. And then when you don't have those things, like the wintertime, you don't have anything big going on, you want to staff down for that. But those are things, once again, we want to make sure that the town knows that this is something that we think they should do, but how that actually happens, it's not for us to dictate. It's for the town and the chief to decide how to do that. Creating a pool of qualified per diem staffing to use for in-station coverage. Those per diem people would be those people that are certified, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, basic EMT at the lowest levels for that. Next slide, please. The town should recognize the only way to develop a more active call department is to determine what motivates these people. I think the chief has a very good handle on what's motivating these people right now, and in our discussion with some of the people during the program, this whole mentoring thing is certainly something that we've seen help motivate people to come in and continually get their training skills up so that they're able to be a really good resource for the chief to be able to use. The town can convene a focus group to determine what concepts in recruitment can be. We always look and say, there are people in this community that probably would become call firefighters if they knew what they had to do, what's required of them, and that's what this focus group would be able to do. What are the roadblocks? Why don't we have more people on our call department so we can maintain it as a call department? That's something that the town would be able to go and focus on doing. Just one more thing on Laurie's plate. She doesn't mind, trust me. All right, next slide, please. This is another one. We looked at the stations, we looked at the response areas, and understanding at one time each station was kind of considered their own individual department. The Wildwood station was something, when we pulled up into that station the first time, all I can think of is, I'm glad I don't have to drive a fire truck out of here. It is not in the best location for the way the roads are around it. At one time, it probably was a perfect spot, but today it's really not. And if you look at the distances between the stations, it's probably time to phase one of them out, and that would be the one that we would recommend based on locations.
Wait a minute, that's down the street from me.
So does that
Okay.
mean you don't get a vote? Is that what we're saying?
Like the town has just done with the other station, we think that in the next 3 to 5 years, the town should really consider working out and actually purchasing the Goose Rock station, which means all fire stations will be able to be owned, maintained by the community, or by the department or the town itself, instead of as individuals. A space review of the Port Village station. We learned tonight when we reviewed the agenda for tonight that that's actually something that you guys are already moving into considering doing, which is fantastic, because that's going to be one more piece of the puzzle of when does that happen and what's the cost factor going to be. So you've already done one of the recommendations already. Next slide, please.
Can we stay here for a second?
Yep.
Okay, I'm over. So, can you go back one for me, Mike? Thanks. So is there data for the Wildwood station? So when you looked at our stations and you said, okay, Wildwood looks like this is one that could come out for the reasons, also the reasons about pulling in and out. And to Sheila's point, do we have the coverage with Cape Porpoise?
From this station right here.
From this station right
Yeah.
here. So
It amazed me how close these two stations actually are.
between Wildwood and
And here,
here?
yep.
Okay, so when you looked at the metrics, we are not putting any resident at risk?
Yep, and if you look at the availability of people coming back to, and this can change, but right now, most people would be coming back to this station. So your responders are coming here, not necessarily going up there. You might have one or two that are going up there. So is it for one or two responders? It's the timing of the responses are going to be seconds between each other of actual, and we call it from the time of dispatch to the time on scene. There's only seconds difference. A second or two could make a difference, but overall, I would say not. I think that if you had to think about phasing out one of the stations, because it costs money to maintain a station. You're heating it, you're paying electricity in it and whatnot, that would be the one that we would look at.
And then, just to hang on Goose Rock's beat, so the recommendation there to purchase is driven because,
But once again, that way the town has total control over their fire stations. So everything you put in and out of there, it's not an individual group. If you don't own the building, you're renting the building, you're leasing the building, what it is. You're on to them. If they turned around and decided one day, we want to charge you $25,000 a month for that building. What? $25,000 a month? Yep, that's the way it's going to be. So you now would have total control over the building because you own the building. So it's just one of those things. It's very rare to find a private entity owning a building and renting it to a community for a fire station. So it's not a very common thing to see at all.
okay.
I can only think of one other
So
community.
it's not anything, I was wondering if it was anything structural or anything, this is more of, like John just said to me, this is more of a business.
A business is just,
Yeah.
so when we looked at all of the stations, that station in Goose Rocks, it's in very good shape. That's really not a whole lot wrong with that building at all. I mean, they've done a pretty good job of maintaining it, as is the same thing with this building here. It's been well maintained, so.
And what did you think of the Chems building, the Cape Corpus?
That's another building that's fine. It's just small, and you're limited because of the height of the doors as to what you can put into that building.
Right.
But because it is set up for 24-hour operation, you really can't do anything with that building until such time as you have someplace else to put people 24 hours a day.
So you're talking, for everyone, you're talking about the per for actual people
Right.
residing.
Yep.
Right.
This building currently is
Right.
not set up for that, and I know that's part of your plan.
Right.
But because the other station is, we chose not to even do anything about it. But there is limitations based on the size of the building and the height of the apparatus bays in that building. Okay?
Thank you.
Next slide, please. This is already happening. We just want to say that we think that the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, working as a team with the fire chief and all, they really should be setting some goals and objectives for the next year or so. We hope that some of the recommendations are in here are part of those goals and objectives. We think that they should establish a goal-setting workshop and be able to go ahead and do that. That sounds like something that's easy to do, but it really isn't that easy to do. There's only so much time that both the selectmen and the town administrator and the fire chief have, and there's a lot of things. Just because you did a budget, you know how much time it took you to do the budget? Take all of the potential things that you could write goals and objectives for a fire chief or a fire department to do, and it's probably 3 times that. And then you got to try and figure out which ones do we want this year and which ones do we not next year. It's important to be able to do that because it also gives the chief and his department members things to strive for. They're not going to become stagnant because there's a process that's been put in place. We'd like you to do this, this, and next. If something happens and they can't do it, that's okay. You might want to move it to the next year. But not having that, I think, is kind of a little bit of a disservice. The chief thinks he's doing the right things, but is he doing what the town administrator and the board expect him to do? And the goals and objectives helps him be able to move the department forward under what you guys are thinking. Next slide, please. There are grants that are available. The Assistance to Firefighter grants are for equipment. The SAFER grants are for manpower or for staffing. Both of those have timelines to it. It's very cumbersome to be able to fill out these grant applications, but especially the SAFER grant is something that the town might want to look at doing because it will help you fund positions for 3 years and 5 years, and then those positions are also funded for benefit packages and whatnot. The condition is that you have to accept these people at the end of the grant period, but it gives you time to build that into your budgets. So that's just one of the grants to look at for that. The SOPs and SOGs, the chief's already been working on that. Once again, that's one more thing that we put in there. However, he's already been starting on doing that, and that's essentially it's the playbook, the rule book for the way the department runs. Next slide, please. Move the fire and EMS dispatching to York County as opposed to having your civilian dispatchers doing it in the police station. If you think about it, when some of these storms hit or there's a serious motor vehicle accident or a building fire, you have one person trying to do police duties, dispatching, and fire dispatching, and EMS dispatching. And inevitably, when you have the house fire, you also have the medical emergency. It's a lot to put on one person. We know from experience, the regional dispatch centers are really a great place to be able to go. We think that you guys should look at going to York County for your fire and EMS dispatching, just for that reason, and allow the police dispatcher to focus on police dispatching only. I'm not going to speak for the police chief. Maybe he would like to go that route. I don't know. But for the fire and EMS, we know from experience, it's a great model, especially when you're looking for mutual aid, because you're essentially calling them anyway. So that one radio transmission to that dispatch center is already immediately kicking in your next run card or alarm, so you know they're automatically dispatching your next fire engines and from the other communities, ladder trucks, ambulances, whatever you want, based on your run cards, which is the next line down right there, which is for automatic response. That has become very, very common, that especially in departments, call departments, where you're not getting a lot of staffing out the door. It's an automatic aid, which means when you get the call for the building fire, automatically this town and this town are sending people to Kennebunkport. They're not waiting for someone to get there and go, oh my God, I need help. It's automatically happening. They're automatically sending them that way. That's the time when timing is really important. So the automatic response, like I said, we see it a lot happening right now. Move the emergency management primary to the fire chief. It was kind of unusual that the police chief is the emergency management director. Most communities we find the fire chief is. Majority of the incidents that happen during the emergency management type things, storms and whatnot, are usually handled by the fire chief anyway. So we think that that's an appropriate place to be able to put him. He has the staffing to be able to manage that. So we think that that's an appropriate place for emergency management to be. Next slide, please. Once again, I just went through the same thing. You could go to the next slide. We think that master planning goal setting, once again, is something that's very common. The goal of this study was to assist Kennebunkport and looking at all their fire and EMS and kind of help them at least strategize the things that should be on the plate to be looked at. But once again, we did not feel it was our place to be able to give you the exact order to do them in, because we don't know other things that are happening in the community that might influence any order that we had done. And we don't want to be able to turn around and have somebody say, well, the guys from MRI said you should do this, this, and this, and you're choosing to do this, this, and this. And it just gets into a fighting. We felt that it was best to be able to say, here's the items, you put them in the order that you think is the best to be managed and handled and accomplished. Next slide, please. Once again, it's to look at this and be able to quantify what's happening, the expectations, identify the areas that need improvement. That was kind of what this report was supposed to be able to do. Next slide, please. The future, it's just being able to come up with a plan. And once again, we've already done the pacing of the plan. We think is something that the town and the fire chief need to do. There's no right amount, and I can't emphasize, there's no right amount of fire protection or EMS delivery that you can say is the perfect one for this community, because our world is changing and we need to kind of change with it. So what's happening today may not be meeting the needs of what's going to happen next year. So it's something that constantly is evolving and constantly being looked at for that. Next slide, please. The challenges ahead is maintaining a momentum, keeping the communications and the personnel is very important. The community needs to define what that acceptable level of service is, and the long-term development of the fire department, its officers, and its personnel. And that is something that we had already spoken to the chief about. It's part of his play, but there's only so many things that he can handle at one time, so I'm not sure where that is on his radar screen. And once again, setting up those goals and objectives, both short-term and long-term, are going to help the department move forward. Next slide. There's 60 recommendations. We want you to look at each one of these recommendations kind of as a goal and approach each recommendation strategically and systematically, and be able to develop what those short and long-term goals are going to need to be able to meet that recommendation that's in there. And then please, every time that one of these recommendations actually is completed, that's an accomplishment. And I think the people that made that happen should be acknowledged for that, because there's a lot of things that are in here, and every step they move forward, that's just a great thing, and I think that, you know, they need to be recognized for being able to take these items and moving them forward. Next slide, please. It's up to you. Is this book going to become a dust collector, or is this something that you're going to be able to use? The outcomes and all are totally up to you. It says there's 66. There's only 60 recommendations that are in here. The reality is, it's up to the community. It sounds like a lot, but a lot of them are just little tasks that need to be done for it. Next slide, please. So that is what I have for a presentation. Like I say, we kind of looked at a 30,000-foot view. I'll take any questions that you have. We might be able to answer. You got to come up so they can hear you.
Come up to the microphone.
No, you have to come up to
You
the
have to
mic.
come up to the microphone. Yeah, yeah. Do we have a handheld?
I guess we can't pass the mic because
People don't want to hear you.
So my question is, did you look at this issue? How capable and how well-equipped is our fire department to deal with electrical vehicle fires, lithium batteries?
A very
Good question.
A very good question.
Good question.
So I will give you the answer that is the best. I am convinced that Kennebunkport Fire Department has the same tools that my fire department has, and we're as equipped as we can be. This whole lithium battery thing is such a huge problem for the fire service, because they built the cars, they built the batteries, and now they're saying, oh, they catch fire? You don't, we can't put them out? You really can't put them out. And that's a problem. There are departments that are using 20 and 30,000 gallons of water trying to put out lithium battery fires, and it's not working. So there really is no one easy solution right now. It's still very much evolving. There's a webinar again next week at the national level talking about lithium-ion batteries and how we deal with it. There is no easy way right now. The best thing that we can do is make sure that if a vehicle catches fire, we get it away from any exposures, because we're not going to be able to 100% put it out.
So do people have to draw straws for who's going to back the car up, or?
So it's interesting enough, when we commented, we came up tonight, we saw the charging station here outside the building, and I'm like, ooh, if somebody's car is out there and catches fire, what are the chances the building is going to catch too?
I need to move my seat.
It's a possibility, folks. It's there. Rest assured, I'm sure the chief is trying to stay on top of it as well. It's very much evolving. It's a great question, but it's a huge problem for the fire service. And it's not in Maine, it's not in New Hampshire, it's not in New England, it's a nationwide problem. There is no simple solution. They have these blankets, you can put the blankets on, but as soon as you move the car, what happens? Batteries
Starts again.
they're still evolving, they're still heating up, they're still giving off energy, they're still gonna burn.
One quick follow-up on that.
Sure.
Yeah, we got a microphone here, so you can sit down if you want.
How about dealing with the toxic fumes from such a fire?
So the toxic fumes are typically something that you would have to deal with if you were in close proximity to the vehicle there. They do dissipate over time. The bigger issue is the runoff from extinguishing these fires and what happens from that. And I can only speak for the state of New Hampshire because of what we are being told here. Our Department of Environmental Services is still evaluating what the best course of action is for mitigating these hazards here. They had a fire on Interstate 93, and the question was broached to them by the fire department, and the towing company didn't want to tow the vehicle away because they didn't know what they were going to have to do with it. Environmental Services wanted them to take that to the closest Department of Transportation facility and do something with it there, and they didn't want it either. So how these vehicles are going to be dealt with in the environmental concern is a real issue, and that is evolving as to what the guidance is going to be. As Dave stated, right now,
There's no good answer right now, is what you're saying.
there's not a universally good
Good answer,
answer
okay.
for that. Right now, what we as fire service personnel are doing is trying to protect the exposures, the buildings and stuff that are associated around where the vehicle is located, and protect those. And it uses an immense amount of waters. We are talking literally 40,000 gallons of water to get these fires extinguished. And what's really happening is that the product that's burning is actually burning out. It's just taking that much water to keep it cool. Now, these batteries are contained within a metal case underneath the vehicle. So getting access to them when they malfunction typically requires raising up a vehicle and being able to expose the issue there. where they're underneath the bottom of the car, there's no real good way to get that. There's various devices out there that you can attach a hose to, slide them under the vehicle, and those will help cool it. But until you can actually get water on what's burning, that fire's not going to go out. So it has to run its course and burn up. They typically off gas in the beginning when they're going.
Okay, I really think we got the
Okay.
message.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions. Am I okay? Okay, so, reading through the report, what I couldn't get a sense of is sort of like a timing. So best practices, as you said, you've looked at a number of towns. So when you talked about the combination of chems and fire, you look specifically at our call rates. You know, we are handling them both from a fire, you know, how Jay's staffed right now, and then how Joe and the team are staffed on chem. So we are handling the town's calls. Like you said, anything could change. But when you go to combine, what I was having trouble with is, like, are we talking 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 15 to 20 years? And that's really why I asked the question about people coming out of schools and how are those degrees getting combined? Because I'm trying to see the feeders into these professions, and then when does this transition happen for us? Or when would you give us guidance based on what other towns have done and what you see us going through as guidance of when we should really start thinking about this?
So merging the two departments, because you have a private entity and a public entity itself, it's going to take time to do it, and it strategically has to be melded together. It's nothing that's going to happen overnight. If you look at what the qualified staffing that CHEMS has today and what the qualified staffing, both cross-trained, so the fire department does have some cross-trained people now that are in there. You would use those as your per diem people if that's what they want to do. You could start this 6 months from now, you can start it a year from now, you can start it whenever you're ready to do it, but it's nothing that can happen overnight. It's something that, there's a relinquishes of assets from CHEMS to the town, there's the way the town needs to set up ambulance receipts and billing and all of that stuff. All that takes time to be able to do. If in a perfect world, I would say start now, and by January or July of next year, you would be ready to go, but don't try and do it now for July 1st. There's too many things or too many steps that need to happen to do a merger to make it happen that quick.
And when you're looking at towns in New England, can you give us an idea of, like, what percent are still operating independently with, like, a chems unit and a fire unit? Or are we sort of on the tail where everybody else is already combining and we're on the...
So unfortunately, a lot of private EMS services that are failing because they're not getting the revenue stream that they need to keep going. And we worked with another community here in Maine that is seeing that happen to their town right now. They have a private ambulance company providing this. And what they've decided to do is they're doing a per capita to get them over one more year, per capita charge to the community. And when you add that per capita charge in to what they already have as a contract price, add that to the fire department, it's more than enough to have a full-time fire and EMS department anywhere in New England. It's like $2-point-something million. So the private EMS, not by design or anything, is beginning to fail. And municipalities are finding themselves in a jam where they're having to do EMS for their communities. It's kind of a twofold problem. One is making sure you get enough staffing. The second is to be able to make sure you can get an ambulance. To buy an ambulance today could take you 2.5 years to get. To buy a fire truck could take you 2.5 to 3 years to take delivery of. And the people that have the ambulances that are in good shape are not selling them because they want to keep them for themselves. So
then what you're saying is well, yes, I got that part. But the majority of the people have already gone through this. The majority of the towns are already through this transition.
They either transferred over to a public-based EMS system or are developing plans now to do so, correct. The quickest one I've ever seen was up in Littleton, New Hampshire. They went from a private-based EMS to a fire-based EMS in about 3.5 months. But that took a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of luck being able to find equipment, ambulances, and staffing to be able to do that with. And that was very, very aggressive, and I haven't seen anybody be able to do it that quick since.
Okay, any more questions here?
No.
None? Okay. Jay, do you have something you want to say?
To do that, you'll need to turn off airplane mode.
Now, to do this, you hear that?
I can't speak until you turn off airplane mode.
Airplane
You
mode.
hear what it said? It said, to do that, you've got to turn off airplane mode. Well, that's why I've got it on airplane mode. So you can't speak, it said.
Yeah. Just real quick, you know, this is a lot of things to take in, and that's really what, you know, the presentation was about, to take it in, give all of us some time to digest it all, and then, you know, look at what's the best path we're gonna go. Where are we gonna set our priorities and work from there. You know, a few of the things are a lot, when you look at all the recommendations, some of them are not much impact to get done and not much impact on the budget. Those are easy. And then there are other ones that obviously are a big impact to the budget and a big impact to how much work will go into making it happen. And so we just have to, you know, as we move forward, and I'm sure that I'll be back in a couple weeks or a month to tell you where I think we should go and how we're gonna start the process.
Well,
Okay.
it sounds to me like you did a lot of work ahead of time anyway, right? So we thank you for that.
Yeah,
Okay,
Because a
thank
lot
you.
of things are in motion.
and the chems team too.
Yeah, Chem too, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think Chems does a good job.
I think we do. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Guys, have a good evening.
I did it.
Do we want to take a minute, or?
Yeah.
we're all set?
No, let's take a minute.
Gonna take a minute?
Yeah.
All right, let's come back in about 5 minutes. Take a break?
Taking a 5-minute break?
So that
Take
would
5-minute
be
break.
5 minutes versus the one.
My grandpa.
So my other. Oh.
Here you go. My mic isn't on? Oh, there. We're on the air. We're on the air. I was just waiting for everybody.
That's what we did.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is consider the climate action plan proposed by the Climate Action Planning Task Force. The thing I wanted to mention is that some people came in after we started the meeting, and I know that there are going to be people who may want to say a few words. So we're we're recommending that we stick to 3-minute presentations or less, what you want to talk about. But what I do want you to understand is that we have received, I don't know, 40 or 50 comments and emails and letters and so forth. And I want you to understand that I have read them all, and a lot of them have read them all. There's a number of common themes, and as you would expect, that there are some people who are pro and some people who are con, which is the way it's just the way it goes in a democracy. So, and I have read them all. I got 13, I think it was 13 more today, and I was able to read those this afternoon. So, and there are some common themes. So, we're anxious to have, not anxious, but we'd like to have you speak if you've got something to say, but just please limit it to 3 minutes. I've got a little thing that I put together that I wanted to let everybody know. This is not a new initiative, climate action plan initiative that just came up in this last year. With the people here in town. I'm just going to take a few minutes before they make their presentation. Back in 2018, we asked the Growth Planning Committee to look forward to the 2022 comprehensive plan and to take a look at climate things and things that we might need to include in that, or want to include in that. And they went out and did a survey, and I just wanted to let you know a little bit about some of this survey. Top priorities over the next 5 to 10 years, preservation of natural resources. 54% of the respondents said yes, the town should continue to preserve and support the fishing industry. 95% of the respondents agreed. Town should plan for local impacts to sea level rise and changing climate. 77% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed. Towns should work to reduce energy consumption of town-owned facilities. 85% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed. Municipal sustainability means meeting the needs of present community members without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, and the town should develop a sustainability plan, and 82% of the respondents agreed or strongly agreed. I don't know how big that survey was. All I know is that was the guiding thing for the Growth Planning Committee. And then the next thing that happened was early in 2019, actually it was an extension of this 2018, the Select Board began a discussion of climate-related actions that Kennebunkport might implement to help alleviate climate change now and in the future. And this culminated in the board adopting on November 12, 2020, the Town of Kennebunkport climate change goals. And that was a unanimous vote by the board at the time. And what we did during 2019 to get to that point, 2019, 2020, 2021, is we had a number of community workshops to explore potential additional climate action plans by working with the community and gathering input that was extremely important so that we could develop a concise plan. Those workshops took place on November 19th, 2019, June 1, 2021, and July 26, 2021. So we had already been working on this and beginning in really 2018. And unfortunately, a lot of it was during COVID. So then the next thing that we did was the board voted unanimously on February 10th, 2022 to adopt a resolution to join the Community Resilience Partnership. And we had to do that. We had to come up, it was, all that was, what it amounted to was a restatement of all, very firmly of the goals that we had put together on November 2020 by the Select Board. So then it was required by the state if we were going to be able to apply for grants. So as a result of that resolution that we passed on February 10th, 2022, and Alan Sheeler and myself were part of that board at that time, we have received a number of grants. The most notable one is the $2,585 we received for the Pier Road Causeway project, and we just I'm sorry, 2 million, I'm sorry. 2,580,000, it's been a long day today, folks. $2,585,000. And then we have, when I wrote this, it was, we had applied for a $50,000 grant to help pay for the engineering study for the Head of the Harbor project. And we have received notice that we have received that $50,000 for the Head of the Harbor project. So the number of grant-related projects that are now in motion that we have participated in is $4.5 million. So it's been a lot of money that we have got because we've had this plan. So the next thing that happened was the comprehensive plan, of course, was passed in 2023, which included many of these same items that we have in the climate action plan. So I just wanted to let people know that this was not a spur of the moment or a one-time thing. This has been something that's been in the planning since 2018, and we've just carried it forward into a climate action plan that was published and put on the website. Was dated February 16th. I'm not sure what day it was put on the website, but all of this stuff here that I just went through is also on the website, and all the backup is on the website and all of the exhibits. So if you want to take a look at it, you're certainly welcome to. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Dr. Pam Morgan, who is going to make the presentation for the Climate Action Committee on what we've done.
Great.
Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you very much for that introduction and history. I think it's really helpful to put this into context. So what I'm going to do is just run through a few slides with everyone to try and give you a quick overview of what the Climate Action Task Force has been doing over the last year and a half and sort of how we got to where we are today. So if we could have the next slide. First, I'm Pam Morgan, as you just heard, the chair of the task force, and I just want to introduce the other members of the task force. Most of them are here tonight. Jen Armstrong is the vice chair, Fred Stafford, Harvey Flashin, Ella Boxell, Steve Kagan, and then John Dykstra and Mike Weston also served as members of the task force and representatives from the select board. And I do want to just take a minute to say that this group of people, and I think everyone here who's served on the task force will agree, this group of people came together because they volunteered their time, they care deeply about Kennebunkport and the future of our community, and it was a wonderful group of people to work with. I feel honored to have worked with them. They are just very people of high integrity who love the community, and I just have to say that because in a public setting, I'm really appreciative of all of you, so thank you for all of your hard work. Okay, let's move on and we'll go through some slides. So the purpose of the Climate Action Plan, building on what Mike just described to you, is to ensure that Kennebunkport will remain economically and environmentally viable in the decades to come. Importantly, as Mike has said, it will position the town to receive state and federal climate grants that are now and ongoing. Without a climate action plan, we will not be competitive for future grants. It will help protect the health and vitality of our town and also help us prioritize existing funds strategically. Next slide. So this was not something that we did all by ourselves. I wanted to mention this. Actually, we were Kennebunkport's task force was part of a cohort of 4 towns, Kennebunkport, Kittery, Kennebunk, and Biddeford, who all came together thanks to a grant, again, that was received through the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. And one thing the grant did was it allowed us to hire Mars Communications to help us with some of our community outreach. It also allowed us to interact with the other towns and sort of help each other through the process and have the expertise of the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission as we developed our plan. Next. So what is the plan based on? And Mike just sort of walked you through some of this. So we reviewed our comprehensive plan, where there's a lot of information about climate change and the town strategies. We did look, of course, at the 2020 Select Board climate goals that he referred to. We were also given from the Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission 75 strategies that could apply to Kennebunkport to help us deal with climate change going into the future. And from those 75 strategies, the task force worked to sort of whittle them down and edit them so that they really seem to fit Kennebunkport. And how did we do that? We did a lot of outreach in the community. We started with a survey. We had 381 responses to that survey. Many of you probably took the survey. From the survey, one of the questions was, would you like to continue to be involved? And we had people say yes. And so we formed some community sounding boards, groups of people who we could meet with, go over the strategies we were working on, get feedback from them. And we had several meetings with the community sounding boards. We did presentations and had discussions with several different groups in the community, and you can see on the slide who they were. We had 2 public meetings at Graves Library, one in the summer and one during the winter time. We did individual interviews with business and property owners, and then we had a joint meeting with Port and Lower Village business owners to hear the business perspective from that part of town that, as everyone knows, is under threat of flooding. And we've had lots of ongoing meetings with RSU 21 officials, and as Mike mentioned, lots of input through letters and comments that we received through the website. So thank you all who've taken the time to read through the materials and input comments through that website. Many of those comments were included in the packet that's on there now that the board had for the meeting today. As Mike said, they keep coming in. There's additional 13 responses that have come in since the time the packet was put together. So it's great that so many people have spoken up. Next slide. So the next thing we did after sort of refining as a task force what we thought the strategy list should look like is we had a workshop with the select board because we wanted to present to them what our work had been to date and get their feedback. And after that workshop, the message to the task force was that we needed to simplify and remove mandates from the list of strategies that we had developed. So we went back and we reduced our number of strategies from 26, which we had at that time, to 19 total strategies. We removed any language that implied that the town would require certain actions. We revised wording to clarify areas where actions were already underway from some of these previous initiatives. And we removed language on how strategies could be implemented. And I want to just take a minute to speak to that, because originally we did have implementation information in the plan, but really the plan is supposed to be, it's sort of a framework or a roadmap of how we're going to move into the future. So the implementation is what's going to happen as a next step after we have a climate action plan in place. So we took that out of the strategies. The revised plan, as Mike has already said, was posted on the town website on February 16th. It was also put in the library and its town office paper copies for people who maybe don't have access to the town website or don't typically do that. We also got the word out through a variety of different places like the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust website and the town's website and a few other places, and also had articles published in the Post and Seacoast Online. So we really tried hard to get the word out about this so we could get all of your input. Next slide. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to go through all of our strategies in detail because they have been posted, and I'm hoping that many of you in the room have read them and you don't need to go through and hear them all again. But I do want to just give at least sort of the highlights. So as we worked through all these strategies as a team, we were trying to think about how to organize them so that they would make the most sense. And we came up with 3 categories. The 3 categories of strategies, one group of strategies addresses helping the town to build resiliency, and that's where most of the strategies are. The other 2 categories are reducing emissions and enabling action. Next. So just to read through sort of the high-level parts of each of these categories, and then there, as I mentioned, there are additional sort of sub-strategies in the overall document. So what do we mean by building resiliency? Here are the things that we have on our list. We want to create resilient infrastructure to support key community services. 2, create energy resiliency to safeguard critical services for residents. 3, ensure community resilience / disaster preparedness to protect residents during extreme weather events, whether it be flooding or fire or anything else, or ice. 4, increase sustainability and resilient development. This means increasing the resilience and safety of existing properties and encouraging new development that is adapted to climate change. And 5, protecting natural resources as a buffer for climate change and to help maintain community character. So those are under building resiliency. Next slide. Under reducing emissions, we have 2 big strategies. One is really centered around energy efficiency. So helping to build energy efficiency to reduce energy costs and greenhouse gas emissions for municipalities, citizens, and businesses. Second is about supporting electric and hybrid vehicles to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And the reason for that is that most of the emissions from the town of Kennebunkport are due to transportation. So that is why it was important to include that. Next. And finally, enabling action. In this category, we have community outreach. We really want community members to know more about what's happening, what's going on, why are things happening, what can we do, and make sure that that is taken care of and that people know about the initiatives and how they can get involved. Second is enabling municipal operations and funding to support the Climate Action Plan, ensuring equal access to services and resources. Okay, so if we can have the next slide. I just want to say finally a word again about implementation. So the plan, again, is a framework. It's getting us started. The next step will be the implementation. The Climate Action Plan consists of recommendations. Any strategies requiring town funding will go through the town's budget review process. Strategies that require ordinance revision will go to the Select Board and then to the voters for approval, as always occurs. And the Volunteer Sustainability Committee that we're recommending will support public outreach and the strategy implementation process as requested by the town. And again, this is a Volunteer Sustainability Committee. We are not asking for a new staff position. We are asking for the creation of a sustainability committee to make sure that all of the things that we have in the plan are addressed and are not put on the shelf, as the previous presenter said, collecting dust somewhere. So that's the implementation piece, which would come next. Next slide. And so finally, we're just asking, the task force is asking the Board of Selectmen if they would adopt our climate action plan as presented. And so that's what I have to say. I'll stop there, and I'm sure there's some people who would like to ask questions or make comments.
Questions from the board?
I just want to thank you for adding the hybrid vehicles in. That was, that just made common sense to me.
It was a great suggestion. Yeah, thank you.
And my one comment is under strategies that require ordinance revisions. When we spoke about this at the beginning, we wanted everything to be, this is we're suggesting this to the town.
Right.
This is our recommendation. It doesn't have to be followed. So I don't know why why do you have an ordinance situation in here?
An ordinance situation. So that would be
Under implementation.
Oh, that's just what would be next. So that's not part of the plan. That would be, so once the plan's in place, one part of the plan says we should review our ordinances and see if there are ordinances that maybe need to be adjusted. For example, the height limitation down at Goose Rock's Beach. If someone wants to raise their house onto stilts,
I see.
the ordinance would prevent that. So we need to review the ordinances and then make adjustments through the regular process. That's all we're asking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So just as a process check, because I know, or not a process check, but a recommendation, would it be possible to go through each item so that we could just make comments on the items, get clarification, and then, because I think there's,
We've done that several times
Well,
already. I don't know that we need to do it again. Really, we've done it X number of times.
well, for the board, we've done it.
No,
at
for the public, we've done it.
I know, Mike, but we're asking, this is, okay, so
So maybe it makes
But if there are
sense that we
specific
we
things,
ask questions.
Yeah, if there's
Of the
specific
I'll
questions.
be happy to go through each section and ask questions then. I just wanted to, so I just want to make sure I can take a step back here. So I agree that we've done a lot, and I'm very grateful for all the work that you guys have done. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice right now. I'm very grateful for all the work and the communication, and this is good. We have heard, as Mike has said, we have heard from a number of residents on both sides. And I actually don't see it as both sides. And it may be naive of me, but what I think of it, I have always said this since we've met the first time when we had the really quick meeting and you guys were just looking for some high-level direction, is that for me, I wanted to stay away from some of the hot ticket stuff, the stuff that would divide us, and sort of try to keep looking for that common area. And so that's where I, and so I would be interested, we've heard some of that when we read through some of the comments. I do believe that there's not so much pros and cons. There's comments on some of the hot buttons, but there's a lot of commonality. And I think as a town, we could really knit this together. And so that was my suggestion, was to just quickly run through. I had some questions, but I'm happy to go through and ask my questions.
I think we should get the questions from the interested parties here who are, because it's been posted on the website, it's been discussed, and unless the board has questions first,
Well, I think that's what Mary Beth says, she has some questions.
well, she's welcome to ask the questions, but not go down through every single item. That's,
I can't think, you can't limit my questions, so.
Mary Beth, when have we ever limited your
I have
questions?
one more question for the fire guy.
Ask
But
your
you gave me the
questions.
look.
I don't have
All
any
right,
look.
all right, so,
But,
okay,
uh,
all right,
but
so
ask
if we go
away.
to the first one, and again, please, when I'm asking the questions, I am asking them to, as a guise of looking for some common guidance. Some of them are clarification, because I just don't understand, and I want to make sure that we're clear. So I'm asking my
Ask your
question.
question.
Okay.
So create resilience and infrastructure. So I just want to make a statement to make sure that everybody was aware that in the 25 budget, we have the 450,000 that's being suggested to put away for the resilience projects that we're looking across town. So they touch on, some major parts all across town. There's studies, and we can look at that. My question is, I didn't understand the regional strategy part of item 2.
Sure, I can address that. And as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because this is where having this plan is going to be really helpful, I think, to the town. So you'll notice, and I didn't mention that, but a number of these strategies there's capitalized regional strategies. So what that means is that there's opportunities to collaborate with other communities to get grant funding. So this one in particular, it's assess and manage impacts of saltwater intrusion and groundwater rise on sewers, septic systems, and wells. And this is something super important, obviously, especially to people down at Goose Rocks Beach. Because as saltwater comes into your septic system doesn't work anymore. So what this means, a regional strategy, that's not just important here in Kennebunkport, it's important to all these coastal communities. So Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, as a matter of fact, has already submitted a grant with us as part of the grant, is my understanding from them, to get somebody in here to help us study this and help the town figure out what to do about this. So that's what it's about. It's working with other towns and getting together to sort of figure out what can we do sort of on a more regional level and not every town do it individually and trying to go out for grants and get funding. We can get together and kind of do this together. And luckily, we have the Southern Maine Planning Regional Development Commission that can work with us to help. So that's what that's about.
All right, so
That
this is
helps.
this is a grouping which hopefully maybe we can, again, going back to the grants, we can go back and get some state funding or best practices.
Yes.
For flooding zones, septic sewers.
Exactly.
Corrosion, what happens from the salt. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Number two, the create energy resiliency. All I wanted to do on that first one, because I think this first one, investigate cost benefit of installing renewable energy generation to serve municipal and school buildings. So where I struggled with this is sometimes at the board, somebody will come in and we'll get a comment from a resident, and it'll be about the comprehensive plan, and, line item, verse number of the comprehensive plan said this, and they're looking at that as thou shalt do, please. You said it in the comprehensive plan, so we should be doing it. And so I think it creates a confusion within our town of these are, like you said, it's a guidepost, it's a best practice, it could be a plan. If we could add ROI onto that, I would appreciate it. And so what I'm getting at is that, like, when we're looking at the reboot of the town hall, the main goal of having, different sources of energy, which the committee is looking at. But we have to, at some point, we have to do the cost trade-off of that. And so I want to, because we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the town.
Right, and that's why I believe we had this conversation when we did the workshop with you guys.
Yeah.
And that's why we put in there
Cost.
to make sure we're looking at the
Okay.
cost benefit of doing any kind of installing renewable energy. We didn't say
I just wanted-
install renewable energy generation. We said, let's investigate it and look at the cost benefit. So
Got
that,
it.
that
And
was
that's
directly
where the
because of what you
ROI
told
comes.
us.
Yep.
That's, Mary Beth, that's what John and I tried to do.
Yep.
When you recognizing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
We tried to do when we did our one day,
Yeah.
quick analysis, putting dollar things beside, little dollar signs
Oh, yeah,
beside it.
little
When
dollar
we
signs.
did it, to recognize the fact that we needed to be able to look at that, because it needs to be a cost
Yes.
benefit relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to recognize and make sure that, people understand that there is, there was a lot of work done between the prior draft and what you're putting forward now. So I understand, I'm very grateful.
I would like to go back to
Where are you going? I'm
I would like to go back to number one, though, if it's okay with you. Can we go back to number one?
If Sheila might kick you, but go ahead.
So the critical infrastructure, one of the things I wanted to say about the critical infrastructure that is already underway is things like the causeway and the study for the head of the harbor, and the money that we're proposing to share with Kennebunk, with studying what's happening, what can we do to mitigate the flooding downtown and so forth. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that if people don't know, it is that we did have some engineers and engineering students from the University of Maine come down and do a very nice study for a project that they did. And if you wanted to, it's on the website, so if you want to go take, I think it's still on the website, so if you want to go take a look at it, they did a diagnosis of 3 different things, and then they made their recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's part of what I call the resiliency, would be the flooding and so forth, too. So that is well underway, and that's money that we're actually
Right.
spending to do.
And that's why we added the wording, continue to support, because you guys are already doing that. It's not something new. Yeah, the town is already doing that.
Okay, Mary Beth, I just
All
want
right,
to go
back to me. Number 4.
Number 4.
So 3 was good, that's insurance of the resilience and disaster, I'm good with that. So number
Yep.
4, I really, and we did get some comments from residents on this one too. Number 4, item 4, consider hazardous disclosures for property transactions and its regional strategy. So, some of the questions we got from residents, and my own question was, is this meant for the public buildings only? It wasn't discrete in the description.
It wasn't. It's, I don't think so. I mean, I think this is already happening, and Lori, you might know more about this than I do, but at the state level, that they're looking at this.
They are looking at it because a lot of people, but what I know, they apply to real estate
Yes,
transactions.
that's what it's
and-
about.
And not disclosing flooding issues and other type of hazard issues in some cases. I'm not saying it happens all the time, it's just, but to make it a law. That's the part I know about,
Right.
you know.
Do you know
I don't
anything
know
about
any
it?
more detail, no.
Yeah, all I know is that this is something that's being looked at and could be looked at too, again, at a regional level, sort of, is this something that the town would be interested in doing? So when people buy a property, they would need to be informed if they're in a hazard area in terms of flooding.
So,
That's an example.
yeah, so this is where, this is the one where I think if we could let the state take the lead and not put it in, like, if you said, okay, what would you prefer? I would like to not have this one, item 4 in here. I think this is where we would, I think we're causing some concern with some of the residents. So for example, if I have property, you know, you disclose on radon, you know, you know where you are on the floodplain map, your insurance is gated that way. So what do? We had a storm, is it the storm we're gonna have every year? Was it, you know,
See,
are we gonna
yeah,
have it
that's a
again
good
50
question, and the best
years?
practices, I think, are still being developed for all of this. This isn't really a done deal. People are still figuring out how to do this. So it's sort of in the exploration stages. I guess it's whether you agree or not with the concept that if someone is buying a home, that they should be allowed to know. And that's kind of, is that something we want to be part of developing, some, around that idea of hazard disclosure
I
as a
think
community?
I would feel, because now we're starting to get into property rights. And this is where I get concerned.
Okay.
So there's this, you know, you do your personal life, you run your thing, you make your best practices and decisions on that. Then you have your private, you know, what I own, and then there's the town part of it. And so this is where, you know, when I'm looking at this, I think we sort of stepped over that line a little bit too much for me on this one. If the state so choose to put in something and then required the counties and the communities to do that, then, you know, we would follow that. But I don't want to have our committee or our charter say that we're sort of taking the lead on this.
So I don't know process-wise what we're doing about this type of thing where someone has a concern and is asking us to sort of edit as we're going here. What,
These are recommendations, correct?
Yeah,
Are you happy with that?
I'm not asking to edit
No.
as we go along, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not happy with
Yeah.
number 4. I
she's
would-
not happy with number 4, I will
Well,
make a
Then
note.
she can vote no, right?
Got it.
Okay, Mary Beth will vote no based
I
on
just- yeah.
So I would just note,
someone on
can't-
the ground.
so I would just note on number 4, the town doesn't have the home rule authority to oversee real estate transactions or make
Exactly.
conditions upon that, because that is controlled at the state, so towns are allowed to do what is either authorized or what the state does not have authority on. And so the only thing I would say here is even if the town wanted to do this, currently we don't have that authority to do. That would be because the state handles all real estate transactions. We certainly could consider testifying at the state level, you know, just like anybody else could, on whether or not they should do that, but that's not something we really have authority on.
I would like to suggest on this point, given Lori's statement, that we would strike that and consider acceptance if we wish to move forward, that we could accept it striking 4.4. So I would just propose that as a possible, I won't propose it now, because we need to get to the end of things, but to be able to move on.
Strike what, John? Let me,
4.4.
4.4,
4.4.
about disclosing hazard disclosure for property
It seems to me that that
transactions.
does not compromise the whole intent and everything we've done on this, and if it's a sensitive issue, I think we ought to consider it.
sensitive?
But let's just see where we end up.
We just
There'll be
can't
other
do it.
things coming.
Yeah.
So let's see where we end up.
Okay.
And
I
can
don't want
you,
to set a precedent.
and I just need clarification and understanding on number 2. And again, my questions aren't meant my questions are meant to seek understanding and get clarification for our residents as, also. So number 2 is encourage and streamline processes for residents and businesses to reduce flood risk through utilization of best practices. So this, I didn't understand I don't really understand what that means. So are we, so is there something that's in our town process and our ordinances that we're trying to get rid of, overstep? I didn't understand the intent of this one.
I think that was to provide the toolkits and the best practices. It's encouraging the sustainability committee as it moves forward to be able to provide the educational material that businesses and residents would need to be able to get these kinds of things done. It might indeed have to do with some ordinance suggestions on ordinance changes to help streamline if there are things that are getting in the way of that.
If somebody wants to raise their property, for instance.
But that's something, again, that would come to the board and would go through the normal ordinance process.
In the original document, if I could interrupt you, John, because I think you're putting two things together. The original document has make tools and resources on climate risks and adaptation options readily available to residents and property owners.
Okay.
So it really is what you said at first. It's making these tools available to people so they can have the information that they need.
I was picking up on the streamline word, as I think Mary Beth is as
I was
well.
picking on streamline.
Streamline
'cause
process,
'Cause
okay.
That sounds like we're
We're
doing
cutting,
something.
we're
So that's
jumping
why-
over.
that's
And
why
that
I
does
put
have
the
to
two
do more
together.
with building permits and that kind of
That's why I
thing.
put the two
Gotcha.
together. But I think they're both true, and that's the intent of that law.
So we really would look to codes and planning, our planning
All the time.
committee to be
Right.
doing all
You
that.
bet. Oh, you
Okay.
bet. You bet.
And then what is 3?
3.
Assess cost benefit to the town manage relocation and retreat programs. And again, this is just trying to understand what it means.
Just what it says.
Yeah.
There
There may be instances where, and it's a national thing too, people are considering, for instance, Goose Rocks Beach, or in any area where we may have to relocate people instead of being able to prevent flooding and so forth. There may be something that the state or the town can do to,
Colony Beach parking lot is an example.
that's another example.
So
Yeah.
right now, we're discussing whether it makes sense to invest in that parking lot or whether it
retreat.
makes
Or
sense
retreat.
to
Or retreat.
retreat.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the same thing eventually, I would venture a guess that it's going to apply to properties somewhere along the way. And then we have to decide as a town what we're going to do.
And so then what you're saying, what I heard you say, Mike, is that, and in being in this thing with the towns, there may be state funding to help. So
Hopefully.
for example, buy back property or,
If that ever
Right.
okay. So the town, okay, thank you.
Yep, that's
Got
what
it.
that is.
Okay, we're on the last page, everybody. Yay. No, we're not.
Sorry.
All
Couple
right.
more.
I'm doing good, though. I'm getting, okay. So the education to the residents. The one thing that I sort of missed in
Where are
this.
you now?
Oh, sorry, I'm on number 6.
Number 6,
6.
building energy efficiency.
Yeah. So
Build
this
energy
was,
efficiency.
promote weatherization, and
6.1.
and this is where I resonate highly. But one thing that I missed in the whole plan, which is conservation, and so that, when you went through your big bullets, there was
Yes. You mean energy
resiliency.
conservation or?
Just conservation. So, for example, when I read through this thing, and when we get to the EV thing, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But for me, it's an individual thing, and you sort of look at your own carbon footprint. So I make different trade-offs than other people, but I'm very environmentally conscious, and so the conservation part. Ideas to not use something to conserve, that thread wasn't through this, and that seemed to be, that conservation word was sort of lost in this document for me. And for me personally, I go first to conservation and then to others.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at number 1, under 6, promote weatherization incentive programs, that that gets at what you're talking about, but it's not specific. I mean, it could be promote weatherization and conservation incentive programs. It's about saving
Well,
and
it's like,
preventing the use of
it's
energy,
presenting
turning out the lights,
use,
whatever.
So, my mother grew up in the Depression, so when we turned the oven on, you could never turn the oven on for one thing. To this day, I don't put one thing in the oven.
Right, and when you leave the room, you turn the
They
lights
turn the
out.
lights off, and when you have stuff to dry, you hang it on the rack in the
Yep.
bathroom. So, I am a serious conservator. I'm just telling you.
So I think,
Comment about the conservation in the plan?
Hold on a second.
One
Wait,
sec,
wait,
we're getting there.
We'll get there.
Thank you.
so, and if I could just say too, like, I think what you're talking about though are things that, this is about how can the town help people gain knowledge and
Yeah.
things that they don't already really have.
Right, and so,
8.2. I refer you to 8.2.
8.2,
because that's
skip down
really-
there.
yeah, the education
Okay.
piece comes there.
All right.
and that's fine, but
Promote climate education in the community at large, and all
could
of the
go there.
conservation and everything else. I mean, we had to narrow this down. We had a whole bunch of stuff in here. It would be,
No,
40
but I
pages
think
long.
what I'm saying is that when I read through, there's resiliency, there's fundamentals, but I think what I would, when we're building out the plans for communication and stuff and education, I would just like to see that, a big thread of conserving,
Conservation.
reuse, don't do, buy local. How many times does the Amazon truck show up?
Yep.
So those are just things.
Yep.
Again, and again, I go back to, it's an individual decision on how somebody wants to live based on what they foresee, their own carbon footprint or whatever it wants to be.
Sure, and we're just saying the
We're just
town,
saying, yep.
we would like the town to provide people with the information so they can make their decisions.
This is
Okay.
specifically calling out the winterization, because that is.
No, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge in our area. So the last one that I guess this is the one
Can we go back to 4.4 before you do the last one?
okay, but again, Sheila is gonna look at,
Can we go back to 4.4?
go ahead, go ahead.
4.4. The reason I really thought that this should be left in is.
Can I just,
You might want to mention what
let
that
people
is.
know what it
the,
is, Mike?
Consider hazard disclosure for property transactions. If we have knowledge down at Town Hall, and we do, about somebody contemplating buying a house that we know is in a flood zone or something like that, and they don't check, it's not up to the Realtor, I guess, to tell them that they have to do it. But we can tell them. That was my whole thing, was that we've had people come, we've had this throughout the town every now and then about people coming in and say, well, we checked, but nobody told me. My Realtor didn't tell me, or somebody. I'm not knocking Realtor, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that's what's happened. And so
We'll
my
send
whole
all-
thing.
We'll send all the emails to you, Mike.
Yeah, send them to me. Thanks. I've got enough of them. So, but I can take more. So anyway, that was what I was looking at, because there are there have been instances just recently where somebody was looking to buy a place down at Turbott's Creek, and they luckily, the day before the flood, decided not to do it. So these are things that if somebody comes into Town Hall and says, where are the flood zones, da-da-da-da-da, aren't we obligated to tell them where they are? That's what I think 4 means.
Only if they ask.
Well, yeah, I'm saying if they ask. We're not gonna go searching, but if they, I'm just saying.
But
if they
I
ask.
think we can achieve, that without having 4 in here. I hear what you're saying, and I think we can achieve it, just like Sheila said, if they come in and ask. I don't think we have to be prescriptive in a plan. I go back to Lori's point. I'm wondering just, if our lawyer was here, the guidance that we'd get. It's one of these things where you're walking, where's the line between town and private property, literally.
Okay, do
I think
you all feel the same way?
Yep.
So, all right, good, all right.
I mean, just to be clear, we do provide a lot of information when people are making sales. They come, they can review the whole property file. Many people have asked about not just the flood maps, which should go in effect in July, but also what are the NOAA calculations and estimates on flood levels in certain areas of town, and we've pointed people to those maps. And so there are people out there doing investigation. And we do provide that information
Yeah.
that we have.
Yep, and I think that's.
So
last
why are
one.
we taking it out then? I'm still trying to
Well,
understand
no,
it.
Mike, I think this really was pointed towards having that disclosed at the time of a real estate transaction as part of the contractual disclosure.
Is that what
I
you guys
believe
had in
that's
mind?
what this is
Okay.
about.
To
okay.
protect the
So
buyer.
Okay.
It's different.
Okay,
It is different.
you got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, my last one, and this is the one that, this will be the tough one, so we'll leave it, this is it. This is where you lose me, like, and I've said this a number of times, this is number 7. So for me personally, I won't own an electric vehicle because, and it's not because I don't believe, and I'm an anti-climate person, it's that I'm actually a technology person. And so for me, technology has a growth curve. And my friend here who owns an electric car, he's one of the early adopters. So it's these early adopters that go out, and when you look across the nation, we're at 3%, 6% sales now of electric cars.
We've just broke 5%.
And we just broke 5%. John must have bought another one. But these early adopters go out and shake the tree for us, right? And so they're testing the metal, and then things change. If you go back to the iPhone, who had the initial flip phones, Motorola, blah, 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 and then they transition, and now everybody has them. And so I see EVs at this point. So I would like to get to 7 with some kind of language that gets away from the cars, but more to the point of what you're trying to get at is a reduction of vehicles' miles traveled. So, for example, if we had made a recommendation to the Colony and Known Anthem to get electric bikes, and have their customers allow their clients to drive around on electric bikes versus using their cars when they drive around town or go out to the beach or something, or the town, they made a recommendation to the town to purchase these that people could rent them. And so those to me are ways, this to me is like a hot, this is
So
where
what
I think we
exactly, if I
lose.
could ask, when you see this, because what we're saying in here, just to let people know who don't have the whole document, it's assess cost benefit of transitioning public fleets to EVs or hybrids, I would say, because we did add in hybrid vehicles, potential partnership with RSU 21. Second is to encourage installation of commercial EV chargers, especially in public lots, hotels, and other public venues. Third is, like you just said, increase bikeability related to biking and walkability where appropriate to reduce dependence on cars. So I'm not sure I'm understanding which of those you're not in favor of.
So I think so for example, when we just, when Chief Sanford came up, at one meeting a couple months ago, there was, we had to get a new cruiser for police. And there was an option of EV or gas, and we allowed the gas to go forward because there was some concerns about repair cost, and so we didn't want a safety vehicle in town. We weren't ready, right? So we weren't ready to jump that. But in the very same meeting, Lori presented us with the option for the town nurse and the health group that we would take a lease out on an electric car. So that was a low impact, low risk, and so we decided to do that. So I think on this one, to me, it's a little strong where we're already doing it, and I want to make sure that we give the board and enough leadway so that we can continue to make these trade-offs until we feel that for specific things, safety's already there, cost is there, and we're able to make these decisions.
That makes total sense, and that's why, number one, we put assess the cost benefit
The cost benefit.
of the public vehicles being EVs or hybrids. I think that's what, after talking to you last time, that's why we tried to include that economic piece, so those decisions, it's not saying do just this, it's assess it, and as time goes on, decisions will be made according to whatever criteria you all have to work with at the time.
Yep.
But we would like to at least to have you consider and to assess the option of including, which you're already doing, it sounds like.
Right.
Hybrids and electric vehicles. So that's all that's saying. It's not a mandate.
Okay, okay.
I mean, these are just
So-
recommendations. These are things that you
Exactly.
bring forward to us to be.
And they have brought 'em-
Decision
Yeah,
later or now or whenever.
Right.
and they have brought them
up to the
forward. Yeah,
individuals, too.
yeah, I agree.
I'm all right.
Okay, so we're going to drop 4-4
I think at this point.
Friendly amendment, is that what we're
as
suggesting?
an amendment.
Yeah, I think we're still in the discussion phase with the community.
Oh, yeah, no, I know
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I know. I just was saying.
Well, I just want to
before-
go on record that I originally said it, and then it wasn't until John said it that Mike agreed.
No, it's not till,
I'm just joking,
Till
I'm
Lori
joking,
said.
I'm joking, I'm joking.
Too close to vote.
that's why I said, once Lori said that we couldn't do it.
So are we striking 4?
Well,
gonna
Or
vote.
that's,
we're
that's the
gonna wait. I think
recommendation?
that'll be at the,
So we're ready to open up to questions?
I would be.
Okay, it's the public's turn. Does anybody want to make a comment?
Okay.
If you want, yeah, if you want to remain seated, I'll just invite to you.
Please do introduce yourself, name and address.
Charlie Arnold, I live out on Guinea Road. First,
Hold it up to your mouth a little bit. It's hard to hear here.
okay,
you know.
first I would like to say I recognize the benefit of having a plan. And Mike, I agree with what you're saying, that it can help get the grants to help address some of the crises or disasters. I also like the parts of the plan that deal with disaster preparedness. Those make sense to me. But as with Mary Beth, I have some real hot button issues. One was with the property thing. But overall, what worries me is that right now, these are presented as recommendations. And I read in your cover letter, Mike, that yes, the town board has to look at these, and nothing will take place without the appropriate votes and everything else. But I see this plan in many areas, the camel getting its nose under the tent, and I recognize the billions of dollars and the massive pressure that can be brought to bear. And I really fear that some of these recommendations right now are going to end up turning into mandates. For example, electrification. Okay, we go to electrification, but that's in direct contrast to disaster preparedness. If there's a disaster and the electricity goes out when we're 10 below zero or at 10 degrees Fahrenheit, whichever, and you don't have, all you have is electricity, you're out of your house. And in fact, we'd be better off with people having a generator and an alternate source of heat. So just going to electrification, it might sound good on Save the Planet, but it's not going to do well for disaster preparedness. So I could go on in this vein. I pretty much associate myself with Mary Beth's comments. Nice piece of property here, but you can't sell it. The town can address this by having up-to-date, accurate flood maps, and then it becomes the responsibility of the buyer to do diligent research. And if he's getting a mortgage, he's going to have to go get insurance of some kind. And so that's not the town's business. It is the town's business to say, here are the flood zones.
Yep.
Come and, by all means, come and check out your property before you buy. But if somebody's determined to buy a piece of property that is 18 inches above sea level and they don't check it out, you can't fix stupid. And the one other thing I would say is, back in January, the Portland Press Herald put out a map that showed the inundation zones it's going to face by 2040, 2050 with catastrophic global warming. Okay, if that's really the case, then there really needs to be some serious planning for Dock Square and right around in there, because that's going to be underwater. I would also point out that the map showed that the place for the new town hall is going to be underwater. So I get this, what are we going to have? Are you going to believe in catastrophic global warming where all the the projections, the computer projections are way off? Or are we going to be dealing with gradual encroachment over a much longer period of time, which allows us to deal with things in flood mitigation down in Dock Square? It's almost like you can't have it both ways. And finally, I would say, look, the planet's in an ice age. Right now, we are in an interglacial period in that ice age, which started 12,000 years ago. If you go by past projections, we're past due for another glacial period. Now, nobody knows, nobody here can tell me, and probably nobody on the planet can say, are we ending the ice age? Are we headed for another glacial period? Or are we going to have an extended interglacial period? Now, that's sort of, okay, we're on, macro thoughts here, but I would urge the town not to go headlong into doing things and spending money that are based on, at the very best, highly controversial science. There's plenty of disagreement on both sides. I don't know which is right. Okay, all right. You get my drift. I don't want this to turn into, the recommendations to turn into, okay, we got the recommendations, now you're going to do as we say or else. Sorry to take so long.
Thank you.
That was well said.
Can we just talk about the, go back to the resiliency plans? Because the resiliency plans, the projects that are in 25 budget proposal, those areas won't stop catastrophic. Those areas are for gradual, or if another big storm comes in. And so that, I just wanted to make sure that we're putting that in context, right? That's our general understanding, is that we're, like Lori said, do we do anything for Colony Beach, or do we retreat? That's the study that's going to happen. Do we do anything for beyond the soft area that we're building up at Goose Rocks Beach? Do we do anything else there, or do we not retreat but let it go?
That the trust is building up at Goose Rocks.
Yeah, that the trust is building up at, thank you, at Goose Rocks Beach. In the other areas, the head of the harbor, the head of the river, and so I see those as not as us stopping something or looking at options to then present to the town of what would you like to do, in a voting situation, not that we would just go do these, right? And I just wanted to give that clarity, because a lot of people haven't been involved in the budget meetings or haven't heard us articulate what that actually is.
Was there a question in there?
That was a clarification.
Okay.
But if you want me to ask another question, I'll be happy to.
You can ask any question you want to ask. Anybody can ask any question they want to
have
ask.
those slides. They personally have them in their packet.
Okay.
Susan, I included the slides in their packet.
Yes, I saw that. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
And so did you want to speak to them?
Yeah,
Now's your time.
You got 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I don't have a microphone.
Yes.
Got
Time
one.
doesn't start. And it's on. It is on.
So in your packet, there are some slides called Kennebunkport Draft Climate Action Plan, and it says author Susan Boak at the bottom.
All right. Okay, I felt that the climate action plan should be specific to the town of Kennebunkport, because we all need to come together looking at the terrible destruction that was done on the causeway, Parsons Road. I don't want a plan that has partisan issues and that will rehash national debates that are ongoing and with unpopular policies like the EV. I don't even think you should mention electric vehicles or gas-powered blowers. They're not going to make that big of a difference for a town. We have major issues that we have to deal with. And the town and the plan should address events which have already happened or for which there is a credible concern. And the town really knows what those are because of past experience. I thought we needed specific goals, and outcomes and also who was responsible. And then I saw just today, Mike, in the, when I read the package twice, there were the plans from 2020.
What the selectmen did.
Yeah, and they were very
They
specific.
were very specific.
And thank you. I think we need to identify positive impacts to our local climate, such as raising roads that need to be raised. You talk about wells. The Nelson Company will give you a yearly discount on testing your water. And so in our little neighborhood, we're going to test it every year and plot it, just if there is, because we're all on wells, and if there's any intrusion of salt water, we'd rather know about it sooner than later. And the town certainly knows areas that are susceptible to flooding. To be effective, your climate action plan really has to identify the responsible parties and have the understanding and support of town employees and citizens. Okay. I'll just digress. We took a 3.5-mile walk with the dog, and I wanted to see the part of the road on Ocean Avenue that we couldn't pass through on a car. And I was amazed. I've seen little areas that were washed out, but this was a whole road that was just completely unusable, although except by bicycles. And I think the town staff already knows where the problem areas are within the town. We have an enormous effort just to fix those. If we want to get funding and we have to have a plan, then just make it as simple and as nonpartisan as possible, because the whole town, I know, wants to support a plan. I don't think we need a committee, but we want to support a plan, and it should be something that we all feel we can support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is not specific to the plan.
Yeah.
This is not specific to the plan.
Name,
but
please.
it's
Name
John,
and
I'm
address.
sorry, John. John Ripton. I live at Capestone Drive on the road on School Street, just off School Street, so you know where I am. I just wanted to add some context here, more generally about climate change. It's been raised that we cannot be certain, and it's true, you can never be certain about anything. But as far as looking to 2050 and saying that we may be uncertain about the kinds of climate change that are taking place, I would just point out that the mistakes that have been made in the prediction of climate change have demonstrated that climate change is happening more quickly than was previously predicted. Temperatures are going up more rapidly. The consequences of that rise in temperature is more intense than was expected for there to be. And I might add that there's an intergovernmental panel on climate change that looks at the scientific reviews around the world, and like 95% of the scientific community agrees that climate change exists and it is anthropogenic. In other words, it is being generated by human beings. So I think we need to take into consideration what we're dealing with here. It's not just simply that we're looking at it from a specific local perspective, but that local perspective is being impacted by global climate change that is taking place across, obviously, global climate change. And that it's not a controversial scientific consideration to the extent that people are suggesting that it is. It's over 95% of the scientific community that agrees that it's taking place. And okay, I'll just simply say that.
John, I just wanted to say one thing about this. I should have said in the beginning, whether you believe that climate change is man-made or cyclical, like the gentleman said, it may very well be. But back when we had the prior ice ages and the prior retreats and so forth, we didn't have anywhere near the population that we have now and living in these areas. So what's happened is man has encroached on the relief barriers that we have in the past from it, whether it's an ice age or a melting or whatever it is. If it's happening again, it's going to happen again. We don't know which way it's going to go or when. But it's certain, I think, in our lifetime, whether it's man-made or cyclical, we're going to see those impacts in this century. I mean, we're already seeing it. I mean, I see it on Pier Road. I live on Pier Road. I see it there. The causeway. I see it in town all the time, and we're having floods. So we just don't know what it is, but we got to do something. That's all I know. Anybody else? Okay.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Hall-Dominy, Tidal Shore Drive in Kennebunkport. So I have concern about number 7, where we say flat out support EV. After we just heard the expert in fire safety say that lithium batteries are unable to be put out and that a charger close to a building could take the building down, I think that there's, we should have some concern in that that's a very firm statement that we're absolutely supporting EV. So I have an issue with that. I also agree with Mary Beth that there isn't a mention of recycling or composting or some sort of basic lifestyle recommendations or suggestions that can, every single person can do without an investment of anything but their time and energy and intention. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
I'm Bob Dominy, also of Tidal Shore Drive in Kennebunkport, and I just thought we should round out that conversation. It was 150 years ago or so that Mark Twain observed Riley that everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. And we used to just laugh at that. But now the weather has come to be called climate, and climate has come to be a religion. And none of it makes any common sense. And what we're talking about here today, whether or not anything is happening, will make no difference, except that we are contemplating imposing a Soviet Politburo style policy in a small town, which will not change the weather or the climate, and it will certainly feel like death by 1,000 cuts to the residents of the quaint small town. Nobody's suggested that 7 billion people on the planet is a few too many. Nobody's suggested that if we stopped all the tourists from driving and flying and coming by bus and coming by ship to Kennebunkport, that there would be a lot less noxious emissions. But yet, once again, we're trying to pass this Politburo style thing so that, next week or next month or 6 months from now, somebody can say, well, you can't have a wood-burning fireplace anymore or a wood stove. And somebody will say, well, why not? They go, because we have a climate action plan. We have a climate plan, and you can't have fireplaces and burn wood when you have a climate plan. So, all that's happening here is a discussion of an age-old problem, the weather, that's come to be called climate and come to be a religion. And for those of us locally, it'll be, I predict death by 1,000 cuts. Not a lot of fun, and will make absolutely no difference in the long arc disposition of, not the planet really, the planet's going to be fine, as George Carlin once observed. It's the people that may well have a problem, which he said more eloquently than I am. I urge a no vote. I think that this group of people in front of us has done a fine job and will continue to do a fine job of dealing with the effects of weather events on the community, whether it be businesses, whether it be residences, whether it be future building. I don't understand why you would want another layer of administrative guidance. And so I would urge a no vote.
Okay, we have somebody in the audience with a hand up. TV Lynn? Who?
Tanya.
Tanya who?
Tanya Alsberg.
I need a last name. I need to,
But she hasn't started yet, Mike.
he said she doesn't say.
I am saying it. if
Okay, good, thanks.
you- Sorry. It's Tanya Alsberg of Briggs Way.
Ah, thank
And-
you.
And I wanted to say thank you to the committee for doing this work and the board for giving so much time to this very important topic. I appreciate the effort of this committee and members and the thoughtful and respectful recommendations that they've presented to the board and town. And I just want to emphasize the word recommendations. It's unfortunate that people are so bothered by having the conversation. I hope that the board members will vote in the affirmative to continue looking at what we can do as a community to thrive in the coming years. My shop on Dock Square has flooded 3 times in 2024. Extreme weather is real, and we need to plan for a future that inspires families to choose to live here and businesses to grow here, and I hope you will vote for this plan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you. Mindy Miller-Muse. I'm on Goose Rocks Road, and I also wanted to echo Tanya's sentiments of gratitude for all of you in the task force and the select board and all of the history that's gone into all of this. Brief comments just in support. I've heard it multiple times said that these are recommendations and cost and benefit analysis, and all of the regular government process will be taken into consideration if there are things that need to happen, and that ultimately this is going to help us receive funding that wouldn't otherwise be available. So I very much hope that you will all support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else in the audience? Okay.
So can I make a comment? So after Mr. Dominy spoke, and then the follow-up conversations, we do have a committee that's recommended. And I think I would like to recommend that in this committee, the makeup is because people do have concerns. And the proof will be in the pudding, right? So if we're saying that these are recommendations and that all the normal businesses, government businesses will happen, votes will be counted, things will be taken, and no regulations will be put in place unless the normal processes are followed, then maybe what we can do to bring this together and give people a sense of comfort is that the committee is made up of maybe some people that have expressed for and some people that have expressed against, and that because then that discussion happens in this committee. And then, so if and then we can form this committee for a year. And then we can reevaluate how it's doing, and the board can make a suggestion, after that. I just feel, again, I go back to my original thing. I think our duty here on the board is to represent the town as a whole, and we do have people that have strong opinions on both sides, and I think we're trying to do the right job of finding something to knit this together and find that common. And I think this, with all the questions that I've asked and the work that's been done, the clarification, I think that we could get there. And then the suggestion would be then to have that committee, and can we get away from the climate word and maybe call it the Resilience Committee?
Yeah, we should.
And then let's bring some, 2 different groups of people together, people that would volunteer for this, and that would be my recommendation.
So I'm in total agreement with Mary Beth. I know you're surprised that I say that.
I'm like, John, that's the big one.
But let me tell you that Mary Beth and I work very hard together to, the other controversy in town has been the town hall. So Mary Beth and I worked very hard. But a lot of people applied for the committee on the town hall, And we tried our very, very best between the two of us to, we couldn't have 20 people, but we wanted to make sure that we had people represented who voted likely, we don't know how people voted, but likely voted but no on the town hall, and then the people who likely voted yes. So I think we have a mixture. We did that very on purpose. I think we have a mixture on the new town hall committee that is that way, and we're getting good ideas that way too. And we're getting some very good ideas. So I think that what Mary Beth is suggesting is a way. We don't have to establish a committee tonight, but we need to be thoughtful about how we do it. And she's absolutely correct. We ought to have both points of views represented. So
We're not discussing that tonight, though, right?
no, I'm just saying. But I understand. I understand that. I
And
understand
think
that.
My very
Just
last
saying.
comment, my very last comment on this. Yes, it will be my very last one. You can shut my mic off after this. But my very last
Did you
comment
say
on
shut
this.
mic off
No,
after
not
that?
now, my last comment. But my last comment is that I think there were different opinions voiced here, and I think everybody was very respectful of each other's opinions, and I very much appreciate that. I think this was a very well-run town meeting. And my initial reaction to a climate plan was that if you ask questions, you would be deemed as a climate denier. And I think that I would like to take that vernacular off the table for this town. I think what I'd like to do is to make sure that people approach this in a way that they know that they may not have a similar view, but if they can talk to each other and find that common view, then that's the way that we can approach and know, are we going to change the climate? Are we going to change the environment? No, but we're doing things on a resiliency thing to try to stand this town up. So if the next big wave, literally, the next big wave comes, maybe some of our roads are the downtown port, if the residents so choose to go forward with that, maybe those things wouldn't be flooded out at this near future. So that's my one request to the town in total.
And am I correct in saying that there are federal monies out there and state monies, and unless we have a climate action plan,
That's correct.
we cannot apply for the money?
That's correct. That's correct.
That's it. I don't have to say any more.
So, does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I will, oh, sorry.
Oh, we got one more? Okay.
Hi, I'm Diane Jenkins, and I live on the Wilds District Road, and we've had a business here in Dock Square for over 50 years now. And we can see what we can see, and more frequently we see what we see.
yeah.
But what I'm understanding is and when you opened up this part of the meeting, you went back at least a half a dozen years and discussed all of the committees that have come forward to get to where we are
No,
tonight.
these are not committees, these are town boards.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
my point is, it's a group of people
yeah.
who have,
Yeah.
and there has been outreach to the community
Oh, there
to
has.
get,
I got
plenty
what-
of outreach to get
I'm sorry,
opinions.
I missed what you were saying, I'm
So
sorry.
my point is that I don't know that I believe it's necessary to reinvest time in going over what's been gone over and over and over. And I would really like very much to have a framework so that we could move forward. And I personally would like to hear a yes vote from
Okay, thank you.
this group. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that the select board approve the plan as presented by the Climate Action Planning Task Force with the amendment to drop 4.4, line 4.4, from the plan as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Done. Thank you to the committee. Thank you.
Hey, they're still meeting.
Everybody's leaving. All right, we'll take a couple of minutes. while we break. Take a couple of minutes and relax.
The last time we all met, we literally just got.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, but yours is off.
But my mic's off? Yeah.
Okay, we're ready. Okay, guys, we're ready. I'd like to do the climate action one again.
Oh, God, no.
Okay, annual appointment of town officers.
Yep.
I gotta get to it.
Tracy O'Rourke is here.
Gosh, it seems so lonely.
Oh, my God. It's like a normal meeting.
Right.
What happened?
Hi. So in March of every year, we do our annual appointment of town officers. And so you have the list before you, and it's basically the same. We didn't lose too many people this year, so
Yeah.
the only vacancy is the code enforcement officer, and everyone else is the same.
Do we have one in the wings?
We do.
Yay.
Oh, excellent.
Good.
And hopefully in April 11th, we'll come back and ask you to appoint that person.
Excellent.
Great, sounds good.
I would move that we appoint the slate of town officers as presented.
Do we want to name them? or-
No, you
No,
don't.
we don't
It's
have
up
to,
you.
just,
Nope.
You certainly can if you wish.
There was a second?
Sheila seconded.
I second.
all those in favor? Aye. God, this thing-
My mic is still on. No one shut me off.
I can't get there. Okay,
Number 9.
number 9, appointment of the ballot clerks.
Yes, so by state law, every other year, on even years, we have to appoint our ballot clerks, and they'll be appointed for a 2-year term. So again, I presented a list to you of the people that have worked in the past, people that have indicated they're interested, and also names from the parties themselves, from the caucuses that they submitted to me. And it doesn't mean we'll use all of them every election, it just means I have that pool to choose from when the time comes.
Motion to accept the election workers,
Second.
Okay,
All those in favor? All right,
But
five,
2024.
2024. Couldn't get that out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Consider the request to amend the ladder truck equipment. Jay?
So as we work through the specs on the ladder truck, a couple of the things have come up that weren't available to us when, about a year and a half ago, that the truck was, when we started the spec-ing process. And one of those is, they make the seats now that it will have zip-off covers. So what we can do is launder those. There's studies out there that the cancer on firefighters from the gear that's dirty, rubbing on them, being exposed to this stuff all the time, the carcinogens of the products of combustion, that this is just something that's gonna help us be able to keep everything cleaner. We have the washing machines that we wash our gear in that we can wash these covers in. So that was $4,000. I'm basically asking for $7,002.91 to be added to this. It'll cover the upgraded seats, because unfortunately, it's not just the seat covers, it's the seats that they developed that have this, that our truck didn't originally come with. We can't put those covers on that seat. And then the other part is for the longevity of the vehicle. It's basically it's like rhino lining, like pickup truck beds they put in it. They put it on a certain part of the frame. And a customer not too long ago said, well, why aren't you doing the whole frame? Well, we only do it here for wear, but you know, why don't we? And then it turned into suspension components and that. So the other of that, $2,761.03 is to do that to this truck
That sounds
with the
worth it.
suspension for the longevity, and
Sure.
it's a half of 1% of the total cost of the truck.
Yeah.
I
I get it.
propose to make a motion.
Motion?
Okay. Authorized amendment of $7,002.91 for the ladder truck.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, good one.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
The next one is to consider proposal from Sebago Techniques for the Village Fire Station programming study and analysis.
Yeah, so in your packet, you have the proposal from Sebago Technics. We had a programming analysis done of the fire station back in, I don't know, pre-COVID. So it was probably in 2019. When we did the town office.
Was.
And so we are at the point on the town hall project that we have done that analysis and we're doing it again. But we really need to move forward and had budgeted in this fiscal year on understanding the needs here at Village Fire Station, both to accommodate the per diems and potentially emergency medical services out of this station. We need something more concrete, especially as we look at the two different sites for town hall. So the board had reported that we were looking at the Village Fire Station site as town hall. And so we really need to understand how that programming need for the future is going to impact us. And that's why staff is recommending we move forward with Sebago Technics at this time.
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to consider to do a proposal from
Authorize.
Sebago Technics for the Village Fire Station Programming Study and Analysis
For $42,000.
for $42,000.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, unanimous. All right. Moving right along.
Got 17 items, 18 items, 19.
12, this is fun, I want to hear what's happening.
And of course, I lose my place, so.
This is the Town Hall.
Town
Building
Hall.
Committee update.
Oh, yeah, and I'm right there. So, Town Hall building update. We had another meeting on the Town Hall, and I'll give everybody the highlights. And these are also available on the town website. It started with Kevin McDonald presenting his Town Hall survey result findings that he and Alan Evelyn they looked into the comments and categorized the different sections of why the Town Hall was likely not approved. There were four major reasons. One for the no vote, it was too expensive, the building was too large, there was environmental concerns, and low trust from the public. The group discussed the need for transparency and how to engage them more in the future. And then another question came up, and that was, there has been a question of why don't we separate the town functions into separate facilities and so forth. So a suggestion was made that we visit those town facilities and take a look at the space restrictions or not, and then so Lori has organized, or Yanina, either one, I'm not sure which one, has organized the tours.
We're team, we're doing.
Work team of the tour of these buildings that were mentioned, and so that'll take place. We had updated plans from the architect and the engineer, and we talked about two places. We talked about where the building could fit at North Street, and how it could fit at the village parcel. And then we haven't honed in yet on the square footage, but it would be reduced from what was there originally. And so we're continuing to evaluate the locations and the facility itself. We're more towards open space and cubicles rather than private office. I mean, open space rather than cubicles and private offices. So that's about it. We discussed bringing the plan to the public residents for public residents input, and we'll work on that document that shows the options we went through to do why it did not work and so forth. So that's it. And did I miss anything in the 2-minute? No?
When will that public meeting be, do you think?
It hasn't been scheduled yet, but I think what we're going to do, I don't remember what the next meeting date was, do you?
April.
April 21st?
Yeah.
Okay, April 21st.
So after that, huh?
After
So
that.
soon after that, yeah, soon after that. So that's the update on the. Oh, Alan, go ahead. Yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Alan Evelyn, Brookside Drive, Kennebunkport. What the focus was, and I didn't hear you mention it, was building a 2-story.
I didn't know because we're still talking about that. Yeah, but we
No,
did.
but that was what was presented.
Yeah, we
during,
focused. Yeah, you're right. I didn't.
during the session.
Yeah.
And as I recall, the size was around 11,200 square feet.
Yeah.
Which includes lots of stairways and things like
Yeah.
that, which.
Yeah.
But the actual workspace was reduced significantly.
That's why I said, yeah.
Yeah. Just
But
wanted to
we
add that.
just don't, right now, we don't have, we've got some estimates, but we haven't
Right.
got, we don't know what it's gonna end up being. But it's probably somewhere around there, though, I'm guessing, yeah.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Alan.
Did anybody balk at the cubicle situation? I'm not a cubicle kind of person.
Well, that's why we're not going to invite you to town hall.
Okay.
I think
So-
people are always concerned about something that is unknown, and
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is
I've
imagine a
worked in
future.
Cubicles.
Yeah.
I never liked them.
I know cubicles too, so
Yeah.
it's not an
No.
unknown.
I think
Don't like
what we heard from the architect and is that when current buildings are being designed now for office spaces, is that allows them to have more
Flexible.
flex space.
Flex space.
So for example, when the workforce, which we know will change in the near future or near-term future, you know, this allows these buildings to be transformed without taking walls down or reconfiguring, and, you know, you can add, remove, change to whatever type of configuration you need.
I meant to mention, too, that this report is available on the website, if I didn't say it.
You did.
I did, okay. It's available on the website. Rather than read the whole thing, I thought.
That's my only comment.
Good. Consider the Goose Rock Speech Advisory Committee's recommendation to fund the piping plover education coordinator for $4,000.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
This also has the extra 1,000, right?
It doesn't, you would have to make that 5,000.
Yeah, I would like
Oh.
to, yeah, I'd like to amend that motion to add $1,000 for, it was a 5,000 last year. We did not spend it all, but we also had a request towards the end of the year to possibly print some T-shirts for the teams. And I think this would be a good thing to do. So I'd like to increase that to a, we're also extending the time so that, well, it's going to be at least, again, I don't know, but it will be on each side to be able to have.
Well, the goal is to really make it earlier, because the plovers are done by the end of August, but last year they started at the end of June, and we'd like to get them sometime in May coming. Because that way they can build up the volunteer base, so that during the heat of the summer, they can be out there.
So if you'd be willing, I'd like
I
to
don't mind.
increase that to 5K, yeah.
Make a motion?
I will make a motion then to give, or allow the Goose Rock Speech Advisory Committee to fund the piping plover education coordinator for $5,000.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Consider the Goose Rock Beach Advisory Committee's recommendation to expend $8,500 on dune plantings, stakes, and twine projects.
So moved, oh. Yeah, so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Because we know Goose Rock Speech
I
needs
think,
it.
I'd like just to note here for the public record
Sure.
that the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust has offered to pay the $8,000 that was short in terms of buying the 11,000 seedlings that will be required to replant the dune surface in front of the Kennebunkport Trust properties. Wow. So we have 3,000 that came from a conservation grant before. It's an $11,000 cost for, it's $1 a plug. And the trust is providing the $8,000. The town benefits that we have one lot there that has been replenished by the trust. There's also one private lot that's been replenished. So that's a wonderful thing. So thank you to the
Very
trust.
good. Thank you, Tom.
So,
15.
yep. Accept a $300 donation from Kathleen Doyle for the Cape Porpoise Pier.
So moved.
With gratitude.
All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Accept $50 donation from an anonymous donor for nurses account.
So moved.
Second.
All those in
With
favor?
gratitude.
Thank you very much.
Other business, Mary Beth.
Yes, I'd like to, once again, publicly thank John Dykstra for the work that he did on behalf of the Conservation Trust. John has a certain set of skill sets, which he put to great use for the town's benefit, for the trust. Anyone that did not see the presentation, if you could please watch, I think, the last board meeting, where you did it at the very end. And I think it's, you know, part of this whole resiliency discussion that we've been having. But I just want to thank our fellow board member that went beyond and above and beyond the work. Thank you.
Nice job, John.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nothing for me, thanks.
I'm all set.
All set.
Nothing for me.
So I just wanted to update you that we've talked before about our valuation and what percentage we're at. So our goal is to be at 100%, and after the reval, I'd say we were at 100%. And that's town-wide, you know, you're never perfect on every parcel. So every fall, the state comes in and audits us based on the past year's worth of real estate transactions. And we usually have to have that information turned in by November. And we just received this week the audit results from the state, and so they have deemed we are at 92%. So I think that's good in terms of, you know, our reval is holding. I'd say it shows that properties are still trending upwards, but we can declare at 100% for valuation and exemption purposes, so people will get the full value of an exemption because it's within 10%.
Okay, oh, that's it. Yeah, 10%. Good.
So the next step is what the assessed value ends up, we read.
Right, and Becky is working on the valuation as of April 1st, which still hasn't happened yet, by the way. But she is working to update that, and by June, we should have our final numbers.
Oh, good. That's great.
Is that it?
That was it. You want me to talk some more?
How about the town warrant?
Move to approve the treasurer's warrant for March 28th.
Oh, all in favor, good.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. All those in favor?
Watch out, everybody. Sheila's running out the door.
I was afraid Mary Beth would say something else.